Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Debbie Lynn Randall. Debbie Lynn Randall was born on August 21, 1962, in Marietta, Georgia, to a loving family with two older brothers. Her parents divorced when she was young. Her mother later married a man named Roy, who became Debbie's stepfather. The family lived in a small apartment building. Debbie was a cheerful and sociable child. On the evening of January 13, 1972, after dinner with her family, Debbie went to the laundromat to supervise the laundry. Debbie's home was just a short distance from the laundromat, so her mother wasn't overly concerned about her safety when she was sent to do the laundry. The original plan was for Debbie to go with her brother, but he was feeling unwell, so Debbie's mother sent her husband to pick up the laundry and Debbie went with her stepfather, holding a box of laundry detergent. At the laundromat, Roy put the clothes in two washing machines and left, leaving Debbie waiting for the cycle to finish. After the wash, Debbie had to walk home and ask someone to pick up her clean clothes because she couldn't carry them herself. However, when the laundry should have been finished and Debbie still hadn't returned, her mother began to feel uneasy. It was getting dark outside, so she and her husband decided to walk to the laundromat to look for Debbie, but she was nowhere to be found. The employee informed them that Debbie had left the laundromat some time ago and had not returned. The news worried her mother, who began searching the surrounding streets with Roy. As they walked, they discovered a suspicious scene. A short distance from the laundromat, in the parking lot next to a car, there was a spilled detergent. Since Debbie had brought a box of detergent with her, her mother suspected that it might be hers. Despite expanding their search to the entire parking lot and the surrounding area, they found no other sign of Debbie. Neighbors who knew the family joined in the search. Debbie's mother decided to call the police for help. The police investigated the parking lot and discovered their first clue: spilled laundry detergent just inches from a parked car, and on the car door, they found several clear fingerprints. The police found fresh fingerprints on the car that were located lower than the handle, which seemed unusual. They suspected that an unknown person might have grabbed the girl while touching the car at this spot. The officers collected the fingerprints and sent them to forensic experts for analysis. They also started searching for the car's owner to confirm whether the fingerprints belonged to them. With no other leads, the police began a thorough search of the area, looking for new clues or witnesses. The laundry worker reported that she did not see anything suspicious. Debbie had waited for the laundry to finish, then left the building with the detergent box. It is possible that she went home to ask someone to pick up her clothes. Police discovered the first key witness, 12-year-old Sandra, who said that as she and her friend walked to a laundromat to drop off dirty clothes, they saw a man grab a girl on the street, drag her to his car parked near the laundromat, and drive away quickly while she screamed for help. Sandra and her friend were lucky to avoid the man's car. Debbie screamed in a car, but he did not slow down. At the time, Sandra did not consider what she saw to be a kidnapping. She assumed the man was a family member who had come to pick Debbie up, possibly against her will. So Sandra did not report the incident to the authorities or tell any adults about it. After learning about Debbie's disappearance, Sandra provided essential details to investigators. She described the abductor's vehicle as a dark-colored, likely 1957 model pickup truck. She also described the man as young, white, with thick dark hair, wearing a white t-shirt, jeans, and black work boots. Another key witness, a girl who lived in the same building as Debbie, shared her observations. She saw a dark-colored pickup truck drive past the apartment building on the evening in question. The girl initially thought the driver of the car was her uncle, but when he stopped in front of her and looked at her, she realized it was someone else. She described the driver as a white man with medium-length dark hair and provided additional details about his appearance. She also reported that he parked his car near their building, next to the same car where a detergent spill would later be discovered. Another witness, a man who lived near the girl's home, reported that a dark-colored pickup truck, possibly a Dodge, almost hit him while he was driving to visit his wife in the hospital. The driver appeared to be in his 30s with dark hair, and the witness saw a girl in the car trying to escape while the driver held her with one arm. Based on these accounts, the police believed Debbie had been kidnapped. They circulated the suspect's vehicle to all patrol units and created a composite sketch of the driver based on descriptions from witnesses. Some officers searched for similar vehicles and checked their owners, while others conducted a wide-ranging search for the girl. As the days passed, more volunteers and police from surrounding towns joined the search. Police questioned Debbie's family, and after investigation, they were all cleared as potential suspects. Debbie's biological father, who lived in the same city, was notified of her disappearance at work and immediately joined the search effort. Police also ran background checks on convicted criminals who lived near Debbie's home, but none of them appeared to be viable suspects. The search for Debbie continued for over 2 weeks without any significant leads. It wasn't until January 29th, when a group of students joined the search teams, that a breakthrough occurred. The students were sent to search a wooded area several miles from Debbie's house. After nearly 5 hours of searching, one of the students noticed a set of tracks on the ground that led from the trail into the forest, suggesting that something had been dragged into the woods. As they followed the trail about 150 feet into the woods, they discovered a human body and immediately contacted the police. Upon further inspection, they quickly identified the body as Debbie Randall. She was wearing the same outfit her mother had described on the day she went missing. However, her shoes were missing. The medical examination of Debbie's body revealed that she had been strangled to death and had also been sexually assaulted. A single dark hair was found on her body, which was likely to belong to the killer. Although DNA analysis was not available at the time, experts were able to examine the hair under a microscope and estimate that it came from a man between the ages of 18 and 30. The investigation then focused on the victim's clothing, which was covered in soil. Police enlisted the help of a geologist to analyze the soil, along with a forensic team. They discovered that some of the soil contained a type of soil mined less than 10 miles from their town called North Georgia clay. However, other stains on the clothing were found to be from a different type of clay, mined by a company just 2 miles from where the body was found. Police theorized that the perpetrator did not kill Debbie immediately, but rather drove her to remote areas, sexually assaulting her in one location and killing her in another, before finally dumping her body in the woods. Police believe the killer may have been hired by one of the nearby mining companies. After contacting these companies, the police searched the employees of both companies but did not find the suspect or the vehicle described by the victims. Furthermore, they found fingerprints near the abduction site, but unfortunately, when these fingerprints were compared to the suspects, there was no match. Debbie's death sent shockwaves through the city, with thousands attending her funeral. Police repeatedly ran into roadblocks in their search for clues. Police officer Morris Nix investigated many suspects and eventually narrowed the list down to 4 people. For Morris Nix, Debbie's murder remained a top priority throughout his career. The case took a breakthrough with the creation of the FBI's DNA database. Experts successfully extracted a genetic profile from hair found on Debbie's body, which was then entered into the database. However, no matches were found. In 2015, 43 years after the murder, police reopened the case and decided to re-examine the victim's clothing using modern technology. The clothing had been stored in an evidence vault since the crime. When re-examined, some of the evidence had degraded over time, resulting in only a partial DNA profile. In 2018, Debbie's mother gave an interview, expressing her hope that her daughter's killer would be found. After the tragedy, she found it unbearable to stay in their apartment, so she moved to another city. Her only wish was for the case to be solved before she died. Sadly, she died of cancer at the age of 78, just weeks after the interview, and was buried next to Debbie. In 2019, the local police department received additional funding, which allowed them to conduct a more thorough analysis of Debbie's clothing. This time, experts successfully extracted a full DNA sample, but unfortunately, the perpetrator's DNA was still not found in the FBI database. Debbie's father was interviewed and shared that he thought about his daughter every day for decades. Sadly, he passed away in 2022, shortly after the interview. Police turned their attention to the first piece of evidence they had: DNA. They partnered with a Florida company that specializes in an advanced DNA analysis technique called genomics. Police provided the company with all the biological samples they had collected over the years and waited for the results. Experts created a DNA profile of the suspect and began searching for his relatives in public genetic databases. After analyzing thousands of potential relatives of the killer, investigators narrowed their search to a family in Marietta. In 2023, police asked the family to provide a DNA sample, which they agreed to. Analysis showed that the killer was indeed a close relative of the family. Experts re-examined the family tree and quickly identified a man named William Rose. However, William Rose committed suicide in 1974, just 2 years after Debbie's murder. Police obtained a warrant to exhume William Rose's remains and took a sample of William Rose's DNA for analysis. 51 years after Debbie's murder, police finally identified William Rose as the killer. At the time of the murder, William Rose, 24, lived in the same building as Debbie's family, and he visited them frequently. The case has finally been solved. Debbie's brother, Melvin, is the only living relative. Melvin attended a press conference and expressed gratitude to everyone involved in solving the case that lasted more than 50 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Corey Richens. Eric Richens was born on May 13, 1982, and left a lasting impact on those around him. As a child, Eric was passionate about sports, actively participating in basketball, baseball, and soccer, which showcased his athletic talent and enthusiasm for staying active. Eric's true passion, however, was anything that involved being outdoors. He was an exceptional hunter, known for his impressive marksmanship, and had amassed an impressive collection of trophy animals from around the world. With his vibrant personality, Eric had the ability to light up any room he entered, spreading joy and laughter through his storytelling, playful pranks, and contagious laughter. As an adventure seeker, Eric lived life to the fullest in Utah, where he owned a wide range of motorized vehicles, including trucks, four-wheelers, and snowmobiles. He loved exploring the outdoors and relishing the thrill of adventure. Despite his love for fun and adventure, Eric was deeply committed to his faith, being a devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Eric's family supported him on a 2-year mission trip to Mexico City, where he became fluent in Spanish. After high school, he attended the University of Utah, earning a degree in international studies with a minor in Spanish in 2009. While working in construction, Eric frequently visited Home Depot, where he met Corey Darden. Over time, they developed a friendly connection, and Eric found himself attracted to her charming personality and beauty. However, he was too shy to approach her directly, so Eric asked a friend to help him get her phone number. One day, while Eric was shopping at Home Depot, his friend discreetly asked Corey for her number, telling her that Eric was interested in getting to know her better. Eric anxiously waited to see if his plan would work. Eric took the next step and called Corey to set up their first in-person meeting, unaware that it would be a life-changing event. As soon as they met, they clicked, and their first date marked the start of a romantic journey. As they introduced each other to their families, their bond grew stronger. Corey's family welcomed Eric with open arms, and Eric's family was equally impressed by Corey's character and how well she fit with him. Although Eric's sisters, Katie and Amy, were initially cautious, they soon warmed up to Corey and accepted her into their family. In 2013, Eric and Corey got married in an intimate ceremony, making their relationship official. After their wedding, Corey gave birth to their first child, Carter, followed by Ashton and then Weston, completing their ideal family. Eric naturally took to being a father, and his boys looked up to him. Eric took great pride in his sons' accomplishments, whether they excelled academically, athletically, or artistically. He consistently showed his support by attending their events and celebrating their successes. Later, Eric established a successful stonemasonry business, which flourished due to his exceptional craftsmanship and attention to detail. Clients sought him out for his expertise in creating beautiful stonework. The business provided Eric and his family with financial security. Additionally, Corey, who worked in real estate, contributed to the family's income. Her entrepreneurial spirit, coupled with her knowledge of the local market, made her a valuable asset. She would buy homes, renovate them, and sell them for a profit. The Richins family enjoyed a wealthy lifestyle, symbolizing the epitome of success. However, their seemingly perfect life came to a sudden end on March 4, 2020, when Corey called 911 to report that her husband Eric was unresponsive. When paramedics arrived, they determined that Eric had already passed away. Devastated, Corey called her mother Lisa, who rushed to be by her side. Corey's brothers, DJ and Ronnie, were present too, overcome with tears and shock. The three of them struggled to come to terms with Eric's passing. Corey recounted that the evening had begun on a happy note as they celebrated her latest real estate business milestone, the purchase of a luxurious mansion. Before retiring to bed, Corey had even prepared Eric's favorite drink, a Moscow Mule, mixing ginger beer with vodka. Corey went to bed around 9 p.m., but ended up sleeping in her 9-year-old son's room because he was having nightmares. Later, around 3 a.m., she returned to the bedroom she shared with Eric. When she touched him, she was alarmed to find him ice-cold and unresponsive. Despite trying to wake him, she couldn't rouse him and knew something was seriously wrong. As she waited for the paramedics to arrive, Corey remembered the dispatcher's instructions to perform CPR on Eric, which she claimed to have followed. The paramedics were baffled by Eric's cause of death, speculating that it might have been an aneurysm, given his apparent good health and lack of known medical conditions. However, further investigation revealed that Eric had complained to Corey about chest pains the night before his death, which initially reinforced the aneurysm theory. But the autopsy results were shocking. Eric's cause of death was ultimately determined to be a lethal dose of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a highly potent pain medication that can be extremely dangerous and even deadly when taken in excessive amounts. After Eric's death, a critical question remained: how did this substance end up in his system? From the start, Corey and her family quickly blamed Eric's recreational drug use as the reason fentanyl was present. Corey explained that Eric would take a THC-infused gummy every night to relax, as he preferred THC, the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, to unwind. However, Corey, her mother, and brothers had concerns about the origin of these gummies, suspecting that Eric didn't always buy them from trustworthy sources, and instead purchased them illegally. Eric's family strongly disagreed with these claims, believing there was more to the story, and urged investigators to explore other possibilities. Despite trying to move on, Corey faced significant challenges, according to her brother Ronnie, as the absence of their husband and father left a huge gap in their lives, leading their three sons to act out due to the uncertainty surrounding his death. Corey, grieving and seeking comfort for her children, turned to a creative outlet to cope with her emotions. She wrote and self-published a children's book on Amazon titled Are You With Me?, which aimed to help kids understand and deal with the loss of a loved one. The book tells the story of a young boy struggling to come to terms with his father's death through illustrations and narrative. In the book, Corey portrayed Eric, her late husband, as a protective angel always watching over their son. Her mother, Lisa, praised the book, saying it brought some comfort to Curry and her grandchildren as they navigated their emotions and rebuilt their lives. However, detectives investigating Eric's death soon uncovered evidence suggesting foul play. Just weeks after Curry appeared on local Utah news stations promoting her book and sharing her grief, she was arrested and charged with her husband's murder on May 8, 2023. The community was stunned by the arrest, and the tragic turn of events transformed what was initially a heartwarming story of a grieving wife and mother into an unbelievable tale of betrayal and tragedy. Curry is accused of murdering Eric by poisoning him. Eric's family believes Curry deliberately put a lethal dose of fentanyl in the Moscow Mule she made for him on the night he died. However, Curry's lawyer claims that no fentanyl was found in the glasses at their home. Curry denies any involvement in Eric's death, saying she had no reason to harm him. Her mother, Lisa, was shocked to hear about her daughter's alleged involvement and told investigators that the couple was happy and had no reason to kill each other. But as detectives dug deeper, they found that Curry and Eric's relationship was not as perfect as they seemed. The couple had disagreements, and Curry, who had given up her career to be a stay-at-home mom, wanted to be independent. She was also growing increasingly frustrated with Eric's frequent hunting trips. According to Lisa, Eric was unfaithful in his marriage, and he confided in her about the affair along with Curry. To address their marital issues, Eric and Curry sought counseling. However, Eric's family denies that he ever cheated on her. Eric genuinely loved his sons and wanted to save the marriage. Despite his efforts, Eric was preparing for a potential divorce. He set up a secret trust with his sister Katie without revealing his intentions. The investigation uncovered that Eric had 6 life insurance policies worth $3 million. Furthermore, Curry forged Eric's signature on an additional $100,000 policy just 2 months before his death. It was also discovered that Curry allegedly stole money from Eric's personal accounts and misused business funds over several years. Contrary to her claims, Curry's house-flipping business was failing, according to Eric's family representative. Curry's company was deeply in debt, with millions of dollars owed. According to the spokesperson, Curry urgently needed cash, and a prenuptial agreement signed before the marriage stated that she would not inherit the business assets if they were to divorce. However, if Eric were to pass away before her during their marriage, the assets would transfer to Curry. The spokesperson's claims were disputed by Curry's attorney, who maintained that the business was not in financial trouble. The attorney explained that the debt was a normal part of the house-flipping business, as it relied on lines of credit that would be repaid once the properties were sold. Curry's attorney clarified that the large debt figure mentioned was simply a result of regular business transactions. Curry's mother, Lisa, recalled that Eric had been supportive of Curry's business ventures, particularly when they bought the mansion where they were celebrating on the night of his death. In Heber Valley, Utah, a 10-acre estate with a mansion sat vacant since its construction in 2017, despite being close to popular ski resorts and Deer Creek Reservoir. This prime location offered endless opportunities for outdoor recreation. Curry, with the help of investors, bought the mansion with plans to renovate and transform it into a recreational hub. Her goal was to sell the property at a significant profit. After consulting an accountant, Curry and Eric discovered that they could potentially make a $12 million profit from the sale of the property, a substantial return on the initial $3 million investment. However, there's a discrepancy in Eric's involvement. While he seemed to be on board with the purchase, his family claims he was against it and had a heated argument with Curry about buying the mansion. Eric's family spokesperson claims that Curry gave Eric a drink containing fentanyl on the night of his death, and they believe this was not Curry's first attempt to harm Eric. They allege that in 2019, during a trip to Greece, Eric became violently ill after Curry gave him a drink. but Curry's brother Ronnie denies this, saying Eric was mistakenly given an alcoholic drink by a bartender while taking antibiotics. Eric's family also claims that Curry tried to kill Eric again on Valentine's Day 2022, a month before his death, when she brought him a sandwich that caused him to break out in hives and struggle to breathe. After Eric's death, Curry's behavior was questioned, including an incident where she allegedly attacked her sister Amy when she tried to open a safe containing a large amount of cash. Curry claimed she was defending herself to retrieve important documents, but was charged with assault and pleaded no contest in June 2023. Curry appeared in court for a 4-hour bail hearing, during which her attorney tried to convince the judge to release her on bail. Prosecutors presented 3 witnesses and evidence to argue that Curry had poisoned her husband. One of the witnesses, a cell phone expert, testified about Google searches found on Curry's phone, including queries about retrieving deleted iPhone messages, FBI's ability to find deleted messages, and the lethal dose of fentanyl. However, Curry's attorney countered that these searches were conducted after her husband's death, as Curry sought answers to the accusations against her. The prosecution also questioned the lead detective about potential sources Curry might have used to obtain the drugs that killed Eric. According to the detective, a woman named Carmen Laba, who claimed to work as a cleaner for Curry's business and home, told investigators about a meeting that took place in early 2022. During a call, Curry asked Carmen to buy fentanyl pills for an investor with a back injury. Carmen, who had a history of drug-related crimes and was on probation, agreed to the request. She later told detectives that she purchased 15 to 30 fentanyl pills and met with Curry to exchange them for cash. This exchange happened on February 11, 2022, just 3 days before Valentine's Day. Around the same time, court documents suggest Curry tried to poison Eric with a sandwich. Carmen also told detectives that Curry contacted her again, looking for even stronger drugs. She said Curry paid her with a check this time. Specifically, Carmen claimed that Curry wrote her a check for $1,300 about a week after Eric's death. However, Curry's attorney questioned whether the check could have been payment for cleaning services instead, and the detective acknowledged that this was possible. Curry's lawyer tried to discredit Carmen by pointing out her criminal history, including 4 first-degree felonies, and suggesting that she might not be a trustworthy witness. The lawyer claimed that Carmen may have been coerced into saying she sold drugs to avoid a long prison sentence, as the detective allegedly told her she would face serious consequences if she didn't cooperate. The lawyer also asked if there was any physical evidence to prove Carmen had bought drugs. The detective admitted that they found no text messages showing Curry asking Carmen for drugs, and no witnesses came forward to confirm they had seen the exchange. At the bail hearing, Eric's sister spoke to the judge, expressing her family's distress over Eric's death, and their fear that if Curry was released on bail, he would cause them further pain. Eric's sister asked the judge to keep Curry in custody, and the judge accepted her request. Meanwhile, Curry's family was upset because Curry was not allowed to leave jail before her trial and would have to stay there. They believed that Curry's time in jail was affecting her mental and physical health. In 2023, something serious happened to Curry while she was taking medicine given to her by the jail officials. She had a seizure and was quickly taken to the hospital from the jail. While Curry was in jail, she claimed that the officials gave her the wrong medication, which caused her to experience adverse effects. Fortunately, she recovered after being treated at a hospital. During her hospital stay, jail officials found a handwritten, unsent letter in her cell. They filed it into court records, claiming it was a note from Curry to her mother. Prosecutors argued that this letter provided additional evidence of Curry's intentions and motivations. In November 2023, they requested a no-contact order to restrict Curry's access to her mother and brothers, mainly due to the letter. Prosecutors claimed that the letter was evidence of witness tampering. According to prosecutors, the letter instructed Corey's mother on how her brother Ronnie should testify in court. Specifically, Corey allegedly wanted Ronnie to claim that Eric had admitted to obtaining pain pills containing fentanyl from Mexico during his trip abroad. The letter also instructed Ronnie to obtain text messages from Eric discussing his drug use. Corey stressed the need to link Eric's Mexico activities to his alleged drug involvement. Despite this, she vehemently denied accusations that a letter was an attempt to tamper with witnesses, claiming it was a work of fiction she wrote as a fantasy story. The judge ruled in her favor, as the prosecution failed to prove witness tampering. Currently, Corey and Eric's family are fighting for custody of their 3 sons, who are living with one of Eric's relatives. Although Corey is in jail, she still gets to see her sons through twice-weekly video calls. While her family has not been allowed private visits with the children, they regularly attend their sports events and practices, which are open to the public. If convicted of poisoning her husband Eric with fentanyl, Corey faces a sentence of 25 years to life. Multiple civil lawsuits have been filed against Corey, all related to Eric's estate. A central issue in these cases is the custody of Eric's children. Eric's family thinks that Corey's family is motivated by a desire to control Eric's assets, as whoever gets custody of the children will also gain control of his money. Corey's trial is scheduled to start in 2025. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Pam Hupp. Pam Hupp was born on October 20th, 1958 in Delwood, Missouri. As the second child of the Newman family, she married Mark Hupp and they had 2 children together. In 2001, the family moved to Fallon, Missouri. Pam had a varied work history, including a job as a life administrator at State Farm until 2010, when she stopped working due to disability claims related to leg and back pain. Despite some past legal issues, including 2 charges of forgery, Pam's acquaintances would never have suspected her of being capable of murder. However, on August 16, 2016, Pam shot and killed Louis Gumpenberger, a mentally challenged man who had been struggling with physical and mental disabilities since a 2005 car accident. Pam claimed that Louis had attacked her with a knife after jumping out of a passing vehicle, and that she had defended herself by slapping the knife away and then shooting him 5 times with her Ruger LCR, which she retrieved from her nightstand. However, this account of events seems suspicious, and it is uncertain what really happened that day. Pam accused Louis of instructing her to drive him to the bank to withdraw money belonging to Russ Faria, a man wrongly convicted of murdering his wife Betsy in 2011. According to Pam, Louis became agitated and excited, saying, "We're going to the bank. We're getting Russ's money." However, evidence later revealed that Louis' true intention was to have Louis Gumpenberger attack and kill Pam. A handwritten note found at the crime scene contained instructions for Gumpenberger. First, he was to obtain Russ's money from Pam's apartment. Next, he was to kill Pam and make it look like Russ's wife was responsible. The note included gruesome details, such as ensuring the knife was left sticking out of Pam's neck. The perpetrator was willing to pay Gumpenberger a large sum of money for carrying out this heinous act. Pam Hupp was arrested for the murder of Lou Gumpenberger. However, a question arose. Was Gumpenberger a hired assassin, or did Pam manipulate him, using a mentally disabled man as a scapegoat? The truth began to unravel when Pam went to the O'Fallon Police Department voluntarily. During her interview, Pam asked if it would be recorded, mentioning that she normally appeared with Chris Hayes, a KTVI news reporter. She even blamed Hayes for attracting criminals through his reporting. Pam had a history of pretending to be Kathy, a producer of an NBC TV show. According to the O'Fallon police chief and the St. Charles County prosecutor, Pam used this persona to lure Gumpenberger into her home, where she tricked him into recreating a 911 call, providing a cover for the brutal crime she was about to commit. After killing Gumpenberger, Pam Hupp planted evidence to incriminate herself, including writing a note found on his body. The police had a strong case against her due to the overwhelming evidence they uncovered. They found $9 bills on Gumpenberger's body, which Pam had placed there. The 10th $9 bill was later discovered in her dresser, and its serial number matched 3 of the $100 bills, also found on Gumpenberger. Pam Hupp was arrested on August 23, 2016, and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. When she requested to use the restroom on the day of her arrest, she attempted to commit suicide by stabbing her wrist and neck with a ballpoint pen. Fortunately, she did not succeed. On January 30, 2017, Pam appeared in court for the first time. The prosecutor, Phil Groyne, argued that her actions demonstrated a consciousness of guilt. A grand jury convicted her of all charges. In December 2016, her bail was set at $2 million. Pam's trial began in 2017, during which she pleaded not guilty, prompting the prosecutor to pursue the death penalty. The prosecutor's reasoning was that Pam had seemingly chosen her victim, Gumpenberger, at random. In June 2019, Pam entered an Alford plea, which allowed her to plead guilty while maintaining her innocence. This move nullified the death penalty charge and led to a jury trial being cancelled. As a result, Pam was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole in August 2019. Following her sentencing, she called her then-husband Matt Hupp and explained that she had confessed to killing Louis Gumpenberger to avoid putting their family through a lengthy and distressing trial. During the trial, disturbing facts about Pam's past came to light, shocking the police, judges, and the public. In June 2016, Judge Cunningham ruled that evidence related to the brutal murder of Betsy Farrier could be presented in court. This ruling led to the reopening of the Betsy Farrier case. Betsy, born Elizabeth Farrier, worked with Pam at State Farm as a life insurance administrator and lived in Troy, Missouri, with her husband Russ Farrier and 2 daughters from a previous relationship. Betsy was diagnosed with cancer in 2010. In October 2011, she discovered that the cancer had spread to her liver and she only had a few months left to live. Sadly, she passed away on December 22, 2011. Before her death, Betsy changed the beneficiary of her $150,000 life insurance policy from her husband to Pam Huff, without informing her husband or daughters. Pam claimed that Betsy had instructed her to set up a trust fund for her daughters, but later alleged that Betsy wanted her to keep the money because they had a romantic relationship. Betsy's daughters took Pam to court in 2014, trying to reclaim their mother's life insurance fund. However, their case was dismissed in 2016. In the same year, Russ, Betsy's husband, sued State Farm. On December 27, 2011, just 5 days after making Pam the beneficiary of her life insurance policy, Betsy attended a chemotherapy session at the Alvin J. Sitman Cancer Center. Weakened from the treatment, she went to her mother's house, where it was agreed that Russ would pick her up, or she would stay overnight. However, Pam unexpectedly showed up and insisted on driving Betsy home, claiming to have dropped her off around 7 p.m. Betsy's daughter reported that her mother didn't answer her call at around 7:21 p.m. Later, at 9:40 p.m., Russ, Betsy's husband, desperately called 911 to report that his wife had taken her own life. However, Russ had been at his friend Michael Corbin's house, watching movies from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Afterward, he drove to Arby's Lake in St. Louis before returning home. When the emergency responders arrived about 10 minutes after Russ's call, they quickly realized that Betsy's death was not a suicide. Her body was found lying on her right side, with 55 stab wounds and a deep cut on her wrist. A kitchen knife was lodged in her neck, and another knife was discovered under her pillow. Notably, there were no bloodstains or footprints around the entrance of the house. The investigation determined that Betsy died between 7:20 p.m. and 9:41 p.m. Suspicion immediately fell on Russ Farrier, who became the prime suspect. The authorities believed he had a motive, as his wife had refused to give him access to $150,000. Russ was arrested and charged with his wife's murder, while the real killer remained at large. Russ Farrier was arrested the day after Betsy's death. He became the prime suspect due to his 911 call, in which he claimed her death was a suicide. However, a glance at the body immediately ruled out this possibility. Additionally, a pair of blood-stained slippers were discovered in his closet, incriminating evidence against him. Russ was subsequently charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action in court in January 2012, just a day after his wife's funeral. The investigation revealed more damning evidence against Russ. He performed poorly on a polygraph test, leading police to regard his behavior as suspicious and erratic. Furthermore, at Pam's request, the police searched Betsy's laptop and found a disturbing Word document in which she expressed her fear of losing her life at the hands of her husband. Russ was held on a $250,000 bail, which he couldn't afford, so he was kept in county jail until his trial on November 18, 2013. During police questioning, Pam revealed that Russ had a history of violence, heavy drinking, and had previously threatened Betsy, making it easy to suspect him of the murder. The prosecution argued that Russ had a strong motive to kill his wife. She had received a large sum of $150,000 for her friend, bypassing him in the process. According to Judge Christina Menem, this motive was enough to implicate Russ. At the trial, Russ's lawyer, Joel Schwartz, defended his client's innocence. Schwartz claimed that Russ had spent most of the night with friends who corroborated his alibi. Additionally, Russ had purchased food at a store that evening, which made it physically impossible for him to stab his wife 55 times within the given time frame. Furthermore, there were no bloodstains on his clothes or body. The prosecutor countered that Russ's friends might have been involved in the crime and had lied about his whereabouts that night. The prosecutor suggested that Russ's friends had accompanied him to buy food at ABY and stage an alibi. The presiding judge, Christina Menem, refused to allow Joel Schwartz to present crucial evidence that implicated Pam as an alternative suspect. This evidence included phone records showing Pam was still near Betsy's apartment 30 minutes after she claimed to have left, as well as the fact that Betsy had made Parry of a $150,000 life insurance policy just 5 days before her death. Despite Pam having a clear motive, the judge chose to ignore it. In a closed hearing, Pam claimed to have put $100,000 of the insurance money into a trust fund for Betsy's daughters. However, in a later civil deposition, she admitted to keeping the money for herself, stating that she didn't want her daughters, mother, or sisters to have it. Meanwhile, Detective Mike Merkel of the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office reported that a crime scene camera had malfunctioned, resulting in important photographs being unable to be developed. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Russ was convicted of first-degree murder and armed criminal action in November 2013. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for 30 years. Before Farrier's second trial, Attorney Schwartz finally obtained the photos that showed no blood trail. To this day, I've tried to identify who in the prosecutor's office sent me those photos, but I've been unsuccessful. Fox 2 News was present in the courtroom when Schwartz dramatically revealed that he had uncovered evidence that police and prosecutors had been hiding. After this, Russ was transferred to the Jefferson City Correctional Center, a welcome development for Pam's sister Betsy. During the trial, Russ's wife testified that he had once pressed a pillow against her face, whispering, "This is what it feels like to die," because she had removed him from her insurance policy. Schwartz pointed out that this story originally came from Pam, but the judge ignored this. Throughout the trial, Russ's friends were falsely accused of being accessories to murder, thanks to the prosecutor's closing speech. Fortunately, no charges were brought against them, even though Russ spent nearly 4 years in prison. In February 2015, attorney Joel Schwartz appealed Russ's conviction. However, back in 2013, Judge Christina Menem had already rejected Schwartz's request to review the case. In 2014, KTVI and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch revisited the case, uncovering some suspicious facts about Betsy's death and her true killer. Their investigation found that Pam Hupp had given contradictory statements to the police, including a false claim that she had left the Farrier residence immediately after dropping Betsy off. The Farrier murder case was marred by controversy and deceit. A police officer recalled being shocked that nobody suspected Pam, with everyone focusing on Russ instead. A 911 operator testified that Russ seemed genuinely shocked and agitated during their call. However, 2 jurors revealed that crucial information had been withheld from them, raising questions about why the sheriff's department would deliberately hide evidence that favored Russ. The media uncovered a disturbing web of relationships between the prosecuting attorney, ASI, and key figures in the case, including the captain of investigations and a lead investigator. This information led to Russ's retrial in February 2015. The Missouri Court of Appeal transferred the case back to the 45th Circuit Court, where a new judge, Stephen R., took over. He granted a new bench trial due to new evidence and released Russ on bond pending the trial. During the retrial, Russ was allowed to present incriminating evidence against Pam. Some police officers admitted that Pam had told them she saw Russ with another man in a car while she was dropping off Betsy. The CSI agent who handled the crime scene believed that Russ's blood-stained slippers were a setup, and that the blood stain was not from stepping in blood. Russ was acquitted of all charges and released on November 7, 2015. He later filed a lawsuit against ASI and 3 deputy sheriffs for ignoring exonerating evidence and fabricating evidence. In 2020, he was awarded a $2 million settlement. The case also led to repercussions for the officials involved. ASI faced a bar complaint, although it was rejected. She later announced that she was willing to cooperate with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Lincoln County Commissioner to review her conduct. Judge Christina Menem was suspended for misconduct in a different case and was voted out of office in 2018 for her role in the Farrier murder case. In 2019, Lincoln County appointed a new attorney, Mike Wood, who reopened the Betsy Farrier murder case. He confessed that the wrongful conviction of Russ had inspired him to take the job. Pam was eventually interrogated as a suspect in the murder and was charged with first-degree murder. The new prosecutor, Wood, sought the death penalty due to the heinousness of the crime. Betsy Farrier was brutally murdered, stabbed 55 times, and her wrist was almost completely severed. Detective Mike Wood condemned the act as animalistic and charged Pam Hupp with the crime. Wood had strong evidence against Pam, including a $150,000 life insurance policy that named her as the beneficiary just days before Betsy's death. Pam had promised to put the money in a trust fund for Betsy's daughter, but instead kept it for herself, claiming that Betsy had wanted her to have it. In an interview, Pam claimed that she and Betsy were lovers, but Wood believed she was lying. Pam had also loaned her son $120,000 from her company in 2021, contradicting her earlier claims. Wood was convinced that Pam murdered Betsy by stabbing her with a kitchen knife while she slept on the sofa. He believed Pam tried to make it look like a domestic violence incident by walking around the room with socks on. The evidence against Pam included a text message she sent to Betsy's phone at 7:20 p.m. claiming she was home, but her call records showed she was still at the Farrier residence. The fact that Betsy was found lying on her side suggested to Wood that she was killed by someone she trusted. Pam pleaded not guilty of the crime, but her trial was delayed multiple times due to her attorney's death and other issues. Finally, in 2023, the trial was scheduled to start in 2025. Wood was not only determined to bring Pam to justice, but also criticized the Lincoln County prosecutors for mismanaging the case and showing bias against Russ Farrier, Betsy's husband. He pointed out a 2015 destruction order that could have led to the destruction of evidence. which would have made it impossible for Russ to be released from prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Alex Murdaugh. Alex Murdaugh attempted to follow in his family's footsteps by pursuing a law degree from the University of North Carolina, where he met his future wife, Margaret Maggie Branton. They started dating in 1991 and got married 2 years later, on August 14, 1993, at the Second Presbyterian Church in South Carolina. Alex and Maggie had 2 sons, Richard Buster Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh. Alex joined his family's law firm, PMPD, as a personal injury attorney, aiming to continue his family's legacy. However, unlike his ancestors, Alex misused the power and influence his family's firm provided, covering up financial crimes, theft, and possibly even murder. For over a decade, Alex's dishonest dealings went unnoticed until his youngest son, Paul, was involved in a fatal boating accident. This incident was the latest in a series of suspicious deaths surrounding the Murdaugh family, leading people to speculate that these accidents were not coincidental and were instead part of a larger cover-up, given the family's history and resources. Here's what happened on February 23, 2019. Paul Murdaugh, fresh out of high school, took his family's boat to Pucas Island for a party with friends. The group, including his girlfriend Morgan Dowie, Anthony Cook, and Miley Allman, wanted an unsupervised night of fun. They planned a house party and oyster roast on the island. To make the night complete, Paul used his older brother's ID to buy beer and hard liquor. They left the Murdaugh River House around 7 p.m. and continued partying until midnight. Feeling restless, Paul suggested driving the boat to downtown Beaufort, where he and his friend Connor had 2 rounds of shots at around 1 a.m. As they headed back to the boat, a surveillance camera caught a tender moment between Anthony and Mallory. Paul, who was heavily intoxicated, started acting strangely on a boat ride with friends. At 1:15 a.m., the group got back on the water, but things quickly spiraled out of control. Paul drove the boat in circles, showing signs of intoxication, and got into an argument with the others. Anthony wanted to get out on a nearby rock, but Paul refused. GPS footage later showed that the boat's speed increased at some point. Although Paul denied deliberately speeding up, he was in control of the wheel. The boat crashed into Arrow Creek Bridge at 2:20 a.m., throwing Mallory into the water. The others were severely injured. Connor broke his jaw, and Morgan's hand was badly hurt. Connor called 911, and help arrived soon after. When the deputy sheriff arrived, he saw blood in the main compartment and a large split in the hull from the impact. All the teenagers involved were extremely drunk, and everyone except Anthony required hospital treatment. Paul refused treatment despite being extremely agitated and having a blood alcohol level of 0.243, significantly higher than the legal limit. The search for Mallory's body took 8 days, and she was found to have died from a combination of blunt force trauma to the head and drowning. Despite multiple eyewitnesses stating that Paul was out of control while driving the boat, he was not arrested or charged. This led to rumors that Alex Murdaugh had used his influence to protect his son from justice. In March 2019, the Murdaugh family was served with a wrongful death lawsuit. Mallory's family alleged that Paul's mother, Maggie, was aware that her son was drunk when they went boating and that Buster had helped them obtain fake IDs to buy alcohol. Paul was finally charged with 3 felonies on April 18, 2019, but he never made it to court because he died before his trial. A series of mysterious deaths have been linked to the Murdaugh family. One incident involved Stephen Smith, a gay teenager, who was found dead on July 8, 2015. His official cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, and it was initially ruled a hit-and-run incident with no suspect arrested. However, Stephen's mother believed he was the victim of a hate crime. There were rumors that Stephen was in a relationship with Alex Murdaugh's oldest son, Buster, and that Buster might have been involved in Stephen's death. Gloria Satterfield, the Murdaugh family's longtime housekeeper, died on February 26, 2018, due to complications from a severe head injury. Alex Murdaugh claimed that his dogs had caused her to trip and fall, but there was no autopsy to confirm this account. The case was reopened on March 22, 2023, and it was revealed that Gloria's death was actually a murder, although no suspects have been named. Alex Murdaugh's family was involved in a wrongful death lawsuit after his housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, died in 2018. The lawsuit resulted in a $4.3 million insurance policy settlement, but the money never reached Satterfield's sons. Instead, Murdaugh allegedly conspired with his friend Corey Fleming, a lawyer and godfather to one of Murdaugh's sons, to steal the payout. The money was diverted to Murdaugh's bank account, and the Satterfield family was never notified. Satterfield's sons filed a new civil lawsuit against Murdaugh in September 2021. On the same day, state investigators opened a criminal investigation into Satterfield's death, citing inconsistencies in the coroner's report. The Satterfield family allowed authorities to exhume Satterfield's body for further investigation. Meanwhile, Murdaugh was facing numerous financial and embezzlement charges. He was allegedly involved in a money laundering and painkiller ring with his distant cousin Curtis Smith, which lasted from 2013 to 2021. On September 4, 2021, Murdaugh orchestrated a scheme in which Smith shot him in an attempt to collect a $10 million life insurance policy. However, the bullet only caused superficial injuries, and Murdaugh was able to call 911 himself. Days later, Murdaugh confessed to the scheme and was charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and filing a false police report. He surrendered himself and was taken into custody. 2 days later, he announced his resignation from his family's law firm and entered rehab. However, it was soon revealed that Murdaugh had misappropriated $792,000 from his law firm. His law license was indefinitely suspended in September 2021. Investigators continued to uncover numerous financial crimes, tax evasions, and embezzlements committed by Murdaugh. After leaving rehab, Murdaugh was arrested again and charged with 2 felony counts of obtaining property by false pretenses. He was denied bond and later indicted on 27 counts of financial misconduct, accused of stealing money from clients, lawyers, and the Satterfield family. Alex Murdaugh faced additional charges on December 9, 2021, with 21 new counts added to the existing 27, bringing the total to 48. The charges included forgery, money laundering, computer crimes, breach of trust, and obtaining signature or property by false pretenses. It was estimated that Murdaugh had stolen over $6.2 million from his victims. The state's investigation into his business dealings took months, with new charges emerging almost daily. By June 2022, the charges against him had risen to 81, and by the time he was formally disbarred on July 13, 2022, he faced 84 criminal charges and 11 lawsuits. One of the victims' mothers filed a legal claim against the estates of Margaret and Paul Murdaugh, raising questions about the character of the once prominent attorney. Could he be hiding something even more sinister, such as the murder of his wife and son? What could have been his motive? The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLAD, revisited the double murder case, considering new information gathered during the investigation into Murdaugh's financial crimes. They discovered that Alex and Maggie Murdaugh's marriage was troubled, and Maggie was living apart from her husband at their beach home on Edisto Island. Maggie's sister, Marion Proctor, told law enforcement that Maggie had not planned to see Alex on the night of the murders. Alex had asked Maggie to meet him at the family's hunting lodge, where she and her younger son were later found shot dead near the dog kennels. Alex claimed to have taken a long nap before leaving to visit his ailing mother, who suffered from dementia. He stated that he was away for 45 minutes to an hour and a half and found his wife and son dead upon his return. However, law enforcement suspected that Alex's timeline was questionable and lacked a clear motive for the murders. The investigation revealed that weeks before the murder, the state grand jury had subpoenaed Alex Murdaugh's finances, which threatened to expose his financial wrongdoings. Additionally, his law firm had discovered his misappropriation of company funds, and he was confronted about it on June 7, 2021, the day of the murder. State authorities believed that the financial pressure had pushed Alex to hatch a plan to divert attention from his crimes and garner sympathy in the public eye. 13 months after the fatal shooting, Alex Murdaugh was charged with the murders of his wife and son. The prosecutor alleged that Murdaugh had shot and killed his wife and son at close range with a shotgun and an AR-style rifle. The murder weapons were never found. Murdaugh's defense team argued that two shooters were involved due to the different weapons used. Expert witness testimony suggested that the shooter was likely between 5'2" and 5'4" tall, which ruled out Alex Murdaugh as a suspect due to his 6'4" height. However, under cross-examination, the expert admitted that there were other possible explanations for the bullet trajectory beyond the shooter's height. The investigation revealed that Maggie was shot with 300 blackout ammunition from an AR-style rifle, and a box of this ammo was found at the Murdaugh family estate. Prosecutors argued that Alex killed his wife and son to gain sympathy and avoid accountability for his financial crimes. Alex's lawyers countered that this didn't make sense, as it would only shift attention to himself and put him in the spotlight of a murder investigation. Alex was a person of interest from the start of the investigation, but his lawyer claimed he had an ironclad alibi for the night of the murders and no motive to kill his family. Prosecutors presented two videos taken on the night of the murder, which appeared to show Alex wearing different shirts. The Snapchat video taken from Paul's phone showed Alex wearing a blue shirt, while the body cam footage showed him wearing a different shirt. Investigators couldn't find the blue shirt, and prosecutors suggested Alex tried to influence a key witness's account of what he was wearing. Cell phone data and testimony from Alex's mother's caregiver confirmed that Alex was only at his mother's home for 15 to 20 minutes, contradicting his claim of staying for 45 minutes to an hour and a half. The most crucial piece of evidence was a video found on Paul's phone, recorded at 8:44 p.m., just minutes before the murders. The video featured the voices of Paul, Maggie, and Alex, placing Alex at the scene of the crime. This contradicted his previous alibi and confirmed his presence at the dog kennels where the murders occurred. Alex testified that he didn't shoot his wife or son, but admitted to lying about his alibi. Alex Murdaugh changed his story, claiming that his opioid addiction and resulting paranoia led him to lie to law enforcement. However, prosecutors argued that Murdaugh fabricated this excuse after murdering his wife and son. They believed he used his wife's phone to create an alibi by making calls and sending texts, including "Call me, babe," at 9:47 p.m. Phone data showed that Murdaugh's and his wife's phones locked simultaneously, and Alex's phone recorded a sudden increase in steps around the time of the murder. Prosecutors suggested this was evidence of him trying to hide or dispose of evidence, but his lawyers disputed this, pointing out that the step patterns on Alex's phone did not match his wife's. The decisive evidence came from a video recorded at the dog kennels. After deliberating for just 3 hours, the jury found Murdaugh guilty on all counts on March 2, 2023. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without parole. Additionally, he received a 5-year sentence for possession of a weapon during a violent crime. Murdaugh pleaded guilty to 22 financial crimes as part of a deal, but maintains his innocence in the murders. He appealed his conviction on March 9, 2023. In a surprise move, his lawyers filed a motion for a new trial, alleging that Rebecca Hill, a court clerk, had engaged in jury tampering. Hill denies the allegations, which include advising jurors to disregard Murdaugh's testimony and other defense evidence, pressuring them to reach a quick guilty verdict, and misrepresenting critical information to the trial judge. A hearing is scheduled for Murdaugh's lawyers to present evidence and witnesses to support their claim. However, A judge has not yet been assigned to preside over the hearing. With over 100 financial and drug crime charges pending, as well as multiple lawsuits, it is clear that the Alex Murdaugh case is far from... Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michael Haight. Michael Haight was born on January 7, 1980 in Seattle, Washington, and later moved to Cedar City, Utah, with his family after his father finished dental school. As a child, Michael was very active and enjoyed playing sports like baseball, basketball, and soccer. He also excelled in school and achieved the rank of Eagle Scout. After graduating from high school in 1998, Michael worked at a fish plant in Alaska for the summer, where he quickly proved himself as a leader, rising to the position of line manager and overseeing a team of over a dozen men. This experience showcased his strong work ethic and dedication. Michael then embarked on a mission trip to South Brazil with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which deepened his faith and commitment to his religious community. When he returned to the United States, he pursued a business degree at Southern Utah University, graduating in 2004. During his time at the university, Michael met his future wife, Tasha Earle, and they fell in love. They got married in the St. George Temple on May 10, 2003. Michael appeared to be a devoted husband and father, often spending quality time with his family at sports events, school concerts, and working on projects together in the garage. On January 4, 2023, a shocking discovery was made at the Haight residence in Enoch. 8 bodies were found, leaving investigators and neighbors stunned. The events leading up to this gruesome finding began when Tasha Haight missed an online appointment and her husband Michael failed to show up for work. Their concerned colleagues contacted the police to perform a welfare check at the Haight residence. When officers arrived, they knocked on the door but received no response. As they surveyed the property, it seemed empty. Considering the Haight's had 5 children, the police reached out to the Iron County School District to check if any of the kids were in school that day. However, it was found that none of the children were present. Before entering the home, the police cleared the premises to ensure it was safe to do so. After a thorough search, authorities confirmed that no one required medical attention and there was no active threat. The Haight's single-story residence with a basement was declared a crime scene, and detectives arrived shortly after. In the main bedroom, detectives found 4-year-old Gavin lying on his stomach, his head turned to the left, with one arm under his head on a pillow and a blanket covering part of his body. Tasha, Gavin's mother, was also partially covered by the blanket. On the other side of the bed, detectives found an older woman, later identified as Gail Earle, Tasha's mother, lying on her back with her head resting on a pillow and partially covered by a blanket, similar to her daughter and grandson. In Bry's room, the 12-year-old girl was found lying in bed, slightly inclined and partially covered with a blanket. In Aman's room, a 7-year-old boy was found lying face down in the corner, without a pillow or blanket. His twin sister Sienna was discovered in her bedroom, lying on her left side in bed, with her head on a pillow and covered with a blanket. The eldest child, 17-year-old Macy, was found in her bed, with her head on a pillow and her body covered with a blanket. In the exercise room of the basement, the detectives found Michael Haight lying on top of a sleeping bag. Sadly, all 8 family members were found dead from gunshot wounds. It quickly became clear to the detectives that Michael Haight was the main suspect, and they believed he had killed his wife, mother-in-law, and 5 children before taking his own life. When detectives started investigating, a neighbor provided vital information that helped them reconstruct the crime's timeline. The neighbor told police she woke up at 3:30 a.m. to use the bathroom, and as she left her room, heard a loud bang that sounded like fireworks. However, realizing it was after the allowed date for fireworks in the neighborhood, she felt annoyed rather than alarmed by the noise. The neighbor reported hearing an initial loud bang, followed by 2 more in quick succession. then a short pause, another bang, and a longer pause before the final bang. Based on this testimony and the condition of the 8 bodies found inside the house, the detective inferred that the loud noises heard around 3:30 a.m. were directly connected to the events that unfolded that night, leading them to believe that Michael Haight committed the brutal killings during this time frame. During the investigation into the Haight family murders, detectives discovered a 2020 report from an unnamed individual who had notified the Utah Division of Child and Family Services about abuse in the Haight household. According to the report, 14-year-old Macy had confided in this individual about her fear of her father, sparking a further investigation. The authorities then interviewed Macy and her parents separately. During Macy's interview, she revealed disturbing information. Her father had choked her on multiple occasions, and she lived in fear of being killed by him. She reported that the violent attacks began in 2017 and recounted an incident where her father grabbed her by the shoulders and pushed her into a wooden piece of furniture. Michael Haight denied hurting his daughter when questioned by detectives, passing off the incidents as misunderstandings and attributing his emotional state to his father's recent death and his brother's divorce. He claimed to have taken out his frustrations on his older daughter. Despite this, Tasha chose not to press charges, and the Utah Department of Children and Family Services, the Enoch Police Department, and the Iron County Prosecutor's Office also declined to pursue the case, as it did not meet the legal requirements for prosecution. A lethality assessment was conducted with Tasha, which indicated that her relationship with Michael was not life-threatening. As a result, victim services were made available to Tasha and her children for several months. Further investigation revealed a different side of Michael, unknown to the community. According to Tasha's friends, they had to speak quietly or turn on the kitchen water when visiting Tasha, as they suspected Michael was monitoring and eavesdropping on their conversations. Tasha's friends would often help her clean the house when they visited, which prevented Michael from finding fault with her. When texting Tasha, her friends noticed that she would respond with brief, positive messages, likely to maintain a positive image in case Michael read them. This suggested that everything was fine in their marriage. The detectives investigating the case discovered that Michael exhibited highly controlling behavior towards Tasha. For instance, he would take away her car keys and phone to restrict her freedom. Another red flag was his overreaction when Tasha bought a $30 rug from Walmart to replace a dirty one, which was a legitimate need. Michael's anger was unwarranted, and he claimed the purchase was excessive. Tasha confided in her friends that her 7-year-old son, Aman, was increasingly imitating Michael's bad behavior. When Tasha gave Aman instructions, he would respond, "That's not my job," which concerned Tasha as it showed his lack of responsibility and disregard for authority. Tasha's friends reported that in 2022, Tasha attempted to prioritize her own well-being by getting her nails done, a rare treat for her given her many responsibilities. However, her husband Michael refused to let her do so, imposing strict limits on her autonomy and freedom. Moreover, Michael frequently disregarded or ignored Tasha's instructions, and their friend Aman often followed his lead in doing so. Tasha felt more confident in her appearance after indulging herself, and she decided to get her nails done every month. However, Michael was unhappy about this decision and expressed his disapproval, worried about the cost. Tasha explained that it would only cost $25 per month, but Michael was unconvinced, arguing that the money could be better spent on their children. Michael's reaction was rooted in his need for control and sense of financial responsibility towards their family. Around the same time, Tasha started prioritizing her self-care and began losing weight, which had been a sensitive topic for her since Michael had often called her fat and ugly. However, instead of being supportive, Michael became furious and accused Tasha of cheating on him, trying to explain the sudden change in her appearance. Michael's controlling behavior escalated as he tried to manipulate Tasha's weight loss, pleading with her to stop losing weight because he was worried that other men might find her attractive. This demand was driven by his own insecurities and desire for complete control over Tasha's body and behavior. Tasha's friends also told the police about an incident where the kitchen table broke and Tasha needed to buy a new one. However, Michael refused to give her the money, further demonstrating his controlling behavior. Tasha was fed up with the old table and decided to take initiative by refinishing it to make it look better and more functional. However, Michael was unhappy with her decision because she didn't ask for his permission first. Michael was extremely frugal during the holiday season, despite earning a good income. He only gave Tasha $100 for each of their 5 children to buy presents, which was not enough in Tasha's opinion. Tasha always made sure her children had a wonderful Christmas, but Michael refused to provide more funds, claiming that he worked hard for his money and saw no reason to give more to his family. He believed that his income was rightfully his alone. Michael's passion for reducing waste and conserving resources led him to implement strict rules on household habits. He forced Tasha to wash and reuse plastic bags, even if they had been used only once or multiple times. This excessive demand for reusing bags added to Tasha's responsibilities, leaving her feeling burdened and overwhelmed. Michael's controlling behavior extended to every aspect of Tasha's life, including her daily routines. For instance, he demanded that she use baby wipes for cleaning, claiming it was better for the environment and more cost-effective. However, this requirement caused Tasha discomfort, hygiene issues, and unnecessary stress. If Tasha failed to follow Michael's instructions, she would face severe consequences, which he made clear would lead to serious trouble. This threat instilled fear and submission in Tasha, leaving her no choice but to obey Michael's demands. Tasha confided in her friends that while Michael had been cruel to her throughout their marriage, he had never directed this cruelty towards their children until the late 2010s. However, over time, the abuse towards their daughter Macy escalated, driving her to consider suicide. Michael had unrealistically high expectations for his daughter Macy, demanding she earn perfect grades despite her struggles, which were exacerbated by the emotional burden of his abusive behavior. This pressure was crushing for Macy. Macy's friends shared a disturbing incident with the detective. One evening, Michael returned home to find Macy comforted by her mother. He became enraged and ordered Macy to clean her room. This event left Macy deeply disturbed, remembering the hatred and evil she saw in her father's eyes. The detectives also discovered an incident where 7-year-old Briley disobeyed Michael while playing with a changing table. Michael responded by blaming his wife Tasha for their children's behavior, calling them the worst and most disrespectful in the world. He then humiliated Tasha, calling her fat and ugly in front of their 5 children. This painful incident prompted Tasha to plan her escape and file for divorce after 20 years of marriage. Tasha realized she had to leave her husband Michael after witnessing his abusive behavior and lack of self-control. She knew staying in the marriage would negatively impact her children, and their well-being was more important than her marital commitment. In December 2022, Tasha filed for divorce, but asked for the papers to be delivered after Christmas to give her children one last normal holiday before the separation. When Michael received the papers, he tried to act normal, but Tasha saw through it. He told her to leave the children behind, but she refused, taking them to her mother's home in Lynn, Utah. Michael showed up at his mother-in-law's house, trying to convince Tasha to go for a ride with him, but she refused, sensing danger. After filing for divorce, Tasha's mother moved in to support her and the children. However, Michael's actions worsened the situation. He refused to leave the family home, instead moving into the basement. Tasha discovered he had secretly transferred $220,000 from their children's savings accounts without her knowledge or consent. She also found that her inherited firearms were missing, leaving her family vulnerable. The couple's children, Macy and Briley, were affected by the constant drama at home. Macy had a secret phone to record her father's outbursts as evidence for the divorce, while Briley found solace at a neighbor's house. Both girls were relieved about their parents' divorce. On January 3, 2023, Tasha met with her attorney, expressing concerns about her divorce and Michael's volatile behavior. Although she had relocated him to the basement, the attorneys pressed her about feeling safe. Tasha reassured them she never feared for her or her children's well-being, but in hindsight, her optimism was tragically misplaced. A disturbing discovery emerged from the digital evidence found on the family's computers and cell phones. Just days before the tragic shooting, Michael made a series of concerning Google searches on December 30th at 10:41 p.m. These searches focused on firearms and shooting-related topics, revealing his sinister intentions. The search results showed Michael had asked alarming questions, such as the loudness of a 9mm gunshot and what a gunshot sounds like. Before taking his own life, Michael wrote a note expressing his desire to end the controlling behavior he felt he was subjected to by his wife. He stated that he couldn't handle the situation for another day and wanted to escape the manipulation. Michael's note conveyed deep frustration and desperation, as he repeatedly asked for help but felt ignored. He emphasized his determination not to be a burden to society. The details of this case have left many in shock, revealing a deeply dysfunctional family plagued by violence. Michael's actions were premeditated and calculated, as he carefully planned the murders to catch his wife and children off guard. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Marcos Matsunaga. Marcos Matsunaga was a member of one of Brazil's wealthiest families and headed Yoki, their business that produced a wide range of food products. Yoki was founded by Marcos's grandfather, Yashizo Cadano, who had immigrated to Brazil. The company name Yoki was derived from the first letters of Yashizo's surname and first name. Yoki's origins date back to the mid-20th century when it started as a small flour milling operation. Despite being formed during a time of crisis and war, the business not only survived but thrived, eventually expanding into a global company with a diverse product line. Born into a wealthy family, Marcos had never experienced hardship or denial. As the successor to the family business, he inherited the company built by his grandfather and father. With this foundation, Marcos had the potential to become the family's first billionaire, a goal he pursued throughout his life. However, his ambitious plans were ultimately unfulfilled. Everyone who knew Marcos personally described him as a skilled and successful businessman. He not only preserved but also significantly increased the family's wealth, generating substantial profits. However, Marcos had a difficult personality. He was demanding, arrogant, and controlling, particularly with those around him. Additionally, he struggled with his physical appearance, having been overweight since childhood, wearing glasses due to vision problems, and being short and somewhat awkward. These issues led to difficulties in his interactions with peers from an early age. Marcos had few friends, and women tended to avoid him because of his unusual demeanor. For a long time, he was unable to form lasting, meaningful relationships. Despite his wealth and business success, he couldn't sustain romantic connections beyond a couple of dates. His arrogance and ego often repelled women, leading him to seek the company of escorts and sex workers. There is very little information available about his first wife. It is known that he married out of desperation and pressure from his relatives, rather than love or passion. Despite this, the marriage lasted several years, but both spouses quickly regretted their decision. The young wife initially tried to tolerate his difficult personality, hoping they could become a happy couple over time. However, she was mistaken, and they grew further apart over the years. Marcos frequently cheated on her without attempting to hide or justify it. He typically found mistresses on websites offering intimacy for money. One such mistress was Alice, an escort with a portfolio on these platforms. Marcos noticed her, a bright and attractive blonde with a beautiful figure, and began regularly inviting her on dates, generously paying for them. Alice was 6 years younger than him and was born into a poor and dysfunctional family in a high-crime area of the city. She never knew her father, and her mother struggled with heavy drinking and was often involved with men who shared her addiction. As a result, Alice had a difficult and joyless childhood, facing repeated physical and emotional abuse from her mother's roommates at a very young age. As soon as she finished school, Alice left her troubled home life and neighborhood behind. She took nursing courses, which led to a job at a hospice. However, she soon realized that caring for terminally ill patients was not fulfilling her dreams or utilizing her full potential. As a sensitive and vulnerable young woman, Alice became deeply attached to her patients, and each death felt like a personal loss. A few years later, Alice decided to pursue higher education and change careers. She chose to study law, which she believed would offer her more opportunities and open doors in life. After preparing for admission, Alice scored well on the entrance exams. However, her modest nursing salary was not enough to cover the cost of her studies. Alice was alone with no one to turn to, having cut ties with her family after leaving home. To support herself, she decided to monetize her physical appearance and signed up on an escort services website. With the site's help, she created an attractive profile, and soon, wealthy men took notice of the young and beautiful blonde. Through her escort work, Alice earned a good income, enough to cover her education expenses and support herself. However, she intended to quit this line of work once she graduated and found a job in her field. During this time, Alice met Marcos, a regular client who showered her with gifts and openly dated her. Although Alice knew Marcos was married, she never imagined that one of the country's wealthiest men would leave his wife for her. Alice Matsunoga's story resembled a Cinderella tale. A poor girl from a disadvantaged background, working as an escort, captures the heart of a multimillionaire who falls deeply in love with her. Marcos lost his mind over Alice, but it's unclear if she deliberately tried to win him over. 6 months into their relationship, Marcos decided he wanted to be with Alice long-term, so he filed for divorce from his first wife without hesitation. He began introducing Alice as his fiancée to everyone. To avoid revealing how they really met in Alice's occupation, Marcos and Alice fabricated a story about meeting casually in a cafe. They stuck to this version, and even Marcos's closest relatives and friends didn't suspect the truth. However, Alice wasn't warmly received by Marcos's family, the Matsunogas. His parents suspected that Alice had used her charm to capture Marcos's heart, despite his unattractive appearance, and was now pretending to overlook his difficult personality. Nevertheless, when Marcos announced his plans to divorce his first wife and marry Alice, no one strongly objected. Marcos organized an extravagant traditional wedding, complete with a white dress, numerous guests, and a large, multi-tiered cake. Following the wedding, he relocated his wife to his spacious and luxurious mansion, where she took on the role of mistress. Matsunogi was renowned for his passion for collecting expensive wines and rare firearms. His home featured a vast wine cellar, where bottles were meticulously arranged by year and country of origin. Additionally, the house had a secret room dedicated to his extensive collection of firearms and edged weapons, which adorned the walls from floor to ceiling. Marcos took great pride in his collections and continually sought to expand them. However, his home was also overflowing with antiques, luxury items, and modern art pieces, which were somewhat tastelessly displayed on the walls and every available surface. After the wedding, they decided to start a family, but despite their efforts, Alice struggled to conceive for an extended period. Consequently, they opted for in vitro fertilization, but success was not immediate. When their daughter was finally born, it seemed that their happiness knew no bounds. Marcos and Alice were devoted to raising their baby girl, planning for her future, and later, exploring the world together as a family, immersing themselves in diverse cultures and traditions. Their daughter was raised with love, care, and every luxury, like a true little princess. However, Marcos and his wife, Alice, shared a unique common interest: big game hunting. In reality, hunting had always been Marcos's passion. He had previously tried to share this hobby with other women in his life, including his first wife, but they had all found it repulsive. Marcos had given up hope of finding someone who shared his enthusiasm. Many people now believe that Alice took up hunting to gain Marcos's favor and win his heart. Initially, they visited shooting ranges together, where Alice learned to handle various firearms. Later, they ventured into the woods to hunt wild animals. Alice showed no qualms about taking the lives of animals, treating it as a competition: either you succeed or you don't. Marcos admired this attitude and enjoyed watching his wife skillfully handle her weapons and track her prey. He also taught Alice how to hunt and prepare wild game such as boars and deer. They would skin and carve the animals together, using specialized tools like large knives, cleavers, and axes to separate the body parts. The family didn't have traditional pets like cats or dogs. Instead, they kept poisonous snakes in specially designed terrariums that mimicked their natural habitats. This was a dream come true for Marcos, who had always been fascinated by snakes but had been discouraged from keeping them by his first wife. Alice had won Marcos over by embracing his unconventional hobbies. By the spring of 2012, Marcos was on the verge of making the deal of a lifetime, one that would catapult him to billionaire status and take his income to new heights. He was busy negotiating with potential business partners, planning to sell the family company and invest the profits in a lucrative new venture. Marcos was rarely at home due to his complete absorption in work and the realization of his ambitious plans. He and his wife resided in an elite apartment complex in the city's business center, near the main office of his company. However, Marcos spent most of his time away, leaving his young wife alone and bored in their luxurious apartment with a panoramic city view. Marcos' work schedule was tightly packed with meetings, business discussions, and specialist consultations, often keeping him away from home overnight. Despite this, he promised his wife that once the deal was finalized, their lives would undergo a significant transformation. But on May 19, 2012, the eve of a billion-dollar deal, Marcos vanished without a trace. His wife, Alice, did not report Marcos missing until the next day. She believed he was at work, attending a scheduled meeting that could have lasted into the night and early morning. Marcos was supposed to meet a business partner and had warned Alice that he might spend the night at the office before heading straight to the meeting. However, when Marcos failed to return home and stopped answering his phone, Alice grew concerned and filed a missing persons report. Police quickly discovered that Marcos had missed both the evening and morning meetings, which was unusual for him. This led them to suspect that Marcos might have been kidnapped, and they expected a ransom demand to be made to his family within hours. Despite this, 24 hours passed, followed by another 24 hours, without any ransom demands. As time went on, hopes of finding Marcos alive began to dwindle. Meanwhile, investigators questioned Marcos's relatives, friends, and business partners to see if he had any enemies or if anyone might benefit from his disappearance or the disruption of his upcoming deal. However, they were unable to identify anyone who might have wanted Marcos dead. Marcos was a skilled businessman who made strategic decisions that generally benefited everyone. However, his personal life was marred by infidelity. His wife, Alice, discovered that he was cheating on her with a woman named Natasha. Despite his promise to end the affair after Alice threatened to divorce him, Marcos continued to see Natasha, albeit more discreetly. Alice suspected that the affair was ongoing and hired a private detective to gather evidence. The detective uncovered photographs and videos of Marcos and Natasha on romantic dates at restaurants and venues that Marcos and Alice regularly visited. It seemed that Marcos was openly flaunting his infidelity, taking his mistress to places where he was well known and where his wife might find out. As it was later revealed, Natasha Lima, a businessman, was discovered on the same escort services website where he had first met Alice. They had been together for approximately 5 months, during which time he gifted her an expensive car and paid a substantial sum of money for Natasha to delete her profile from the site. Alice presented photos and videos as evidence of her husband's infidelity to Marcos's parents. She mentioned that she had shown all this to Marcos the day before his disappearance, but instead of apologizing and asking for forgiveness, he packed his belongings, informed his wife that he was leaving her, and then departed from their apartment, vanishing without a trace. Based on Alice's account, it seemed that her husband had given in to his desires and decided to run away with his new mistress. However, those who knew Matsunaga unanimously agreed that he was too invested in the business, which his family had built over decades, to simply abandon it and disappear. The answers to many questions were uncovered about a week later when a passerby discovered scattered garbage bags containing human remains in a deserted area roughly 50 kilometers from Marcos's residence. The man immediately notified the police of his gruesome discovery. The victim was soon identified as Marcus Matsunaga, a missing person who had been searched for nationwide. According to experts, Matsunaga was shot in the head and then dismembered. His body was packed into garbage bags and dumped on the outskirts of the city. The killer's skills with a carving knife suggested they were either a surgeon or an experienced butcher. This conclusion was drawn from the precise cuts made to separate the body parts. The investigation initially lacked concrete leads, so it began by reviewing the last known location of the deceased. The elite residential complex where Matsunaga lived with his wife and daughter had multiple surveillance cameras, and their footage was carefully examined. The evening before Matsunaga went missing, he and his wife ordered food to be delivered to their home. Security footage shows Matsunaga taking the elevator to the first floor, then returning to his apartment with pizza boxes in hand. He entered the apartment and never left again, not that evening, overnight, or the next day. Despite this, his wife was seen leaving the apartment the following morning with 3 large, wheeled suitcases. The footage shows Alice struggling to move heavy suitcases, which sparked the investigators' suspicions about their contents. On the same day, she was taken into custody and questioned at the police station. Initially, she denied any wrongdoing, sticking to her story that her husband had left her for another woman. However, when shown the elevator footage, she broke down in tears and began to open up. Alice revealed that her marriage had been troubled for a long time, and her husband's behavior had become increasingly abusive. He constantly belittled her, bringing up her past work as an escort and claiming he had rescued her. He also controlled every aspect of her life, isolating her from friends and criticizing her parenting. When Alice mentioned divorce, Marcos threatened to leave her with nothing, take their daughter, and restrict her access to the child. On the evening of the incident, Alice confronted her husband with photos of him and his mistress, which only enraged him. He physically abused her, and Alice's memories of what happened next are hazy. She doesn't recall how she obtained the gun used to shoot her husband. Later, realizing what she had done, Alice attempted to cover up the crime by disposing of the body and making it seem like her husband had vanished. Alice, a former nurse familiar with human anatomy, had been taught by her husband how to dissect animal carcasses. They had the necessary tools at home, making the process of cutting up her husband's body a matter of technique. This gruesome task was carried out while their young daughter slept in the next room. However, Alice's testimony raised many doubts and questions from the start. Further investigation revealed that Alice received photos and videos of her husband's infidelity from a private detective on May 20th, after she had already killed him. She presented these to her husband's parents, claiming he had abandoned her for his mistress. A witness, Natasha Lima, testified in court that Marcos wanted a divorce but was afraid of Alice, describing her as mentally unstable and capable of terrible things. Natasha stated that the last time she saw Marcos, he complained about the constant family scandals and shared his plans to move to Florida after selling his company. He intended to start a new business and leave Alice behind, as he planned to divorce her and move on with his life. Experts made a disturbing discovery. There was blood in Marcos's lungs, indicating he was still alive and trying to breathe when his head was severed from his body. This contradicts Alice's claim that he died instantly from a bullet wound. Furthermore, the pathologist found that the bullet entered Marcos's head at an unusual angle, suggesting he was not expecting to be shot and made no attempt to defend himself. This finding contradicts Alice's account of Marcos attacking her and her need to defend herself. Most witnesses testified that Marcos, despite his difficult personality and hurtful words, never physically harmed anyone. It appears that Alice fabricated the episode, taking advantage of Marcos's inability to refute her claims. Ultimately, the court found Alice guilty of premeditated murder with extreme cruelty and attempting to cover up the crime. Alice Matsuniga received a 20-year prison sentence, a punishment many deemed too lenient for her crime. The victim's parents are now tasked with raising their granddaughter. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Savannah Greywind. Savannah Greywind was born on August 9, 1995, in Burke County, North Dakota. Savannah had two brothers, Joe and Casey, and a younger sister, Kayla. Her parents, Norberta and Joe, took great pride in their children. The family resided in Fargo, North Dakota, until Savannah was 9 years old, then relocated to the Spirit Lake Reservation in 2005. Growing up on the Spirit Lake Reservation, a Native American community in eastern North Dakota, Savannah developed a deep appreciation for nature and animals, particularly horses. It was there that she met Ashton Matheny when she was 15 years old, and they have remained together ever since. When it was time for Savannah and Ashton to pursue higher education, the family moved back to Fargo. Savannah secured a job at a nursing home caring for the elderly, began studying to become a nurse, and was preparing to take her certification exam in September. At this point in her life, Savannah was a happy young woman expecting her first child. She and Ashton had found an apartment, paid a deposit, and planned to move into their own home in early September. Meanwhile, Savannah was living with her parents in a basement apartment of a 7-unit, 3-story building. Unbeknownst to her, Brooke Cruz, 38, and William Hone, 33, rented an apartment on the 3rd floor of the same building. Brooke Lynn Cruz grew up in a neighborhood in Bradenton, Sarasota, Florida. Her parents divorced when she was young, leaving Brooke and her 6 siblings to live with their mother. According to her sister, the family had a relatively comfortable life. Brooke underwent significant changes during her teenage years, transforming from a caring girl to a troubled teen. She was shuffled between foster homes, losing contact with her siblings. Brooke was imprisoned in Missouri in 2002 for falsifying documents, then arrested again for parole violation in Texas. She married Carl Cruz, a carpenter from Minnesota, at 27, had 2 more children, and worked as an administrative assistant. The marriage ended in divorce in 2009, with the father granted custody of the children. Brooke kept diaries throughout her life, recording tumultuous relationships and self-doubt. Brooke believed Carl had emotionally traumatized her through bullying and belittling. Despite this, she took steps to move forward, studying psychology and joining a dating site, where she met Andrew Murray, a chef from Australia. She relocated to Australia in late 2011. In January 2012, Brooke had an argument with her ex-husband over child custody. The situation escalated, and Brooke allegedly attacked him with a knife, leading to her arrest. She fled to Australia using false documents and married Andrew, but their 6-month marriage ended when he discovered her past. After returning to the US, Brooke was involved in a custody battle for her children. She then met William Hone, a 28-year-old convicted of child abuse, and fell in love with him despite his concerning past. Brooke began taking steps towards a fresh start, including finding a job in 2013. Brooke turned her hobby into a profession by studying psychology at Minnesota State University. She developed a particular interest in the psychology of serial killers and wrote a well-received paper. However, her personal life struggled due to a codependent relationship with William, marked by excessive drinking and substance abuse. Despite her outward success, Brooke's mental health deteriorated, leading to withdrawal, strained relationships at work, and a job change. Her obsession with dark human psychology exacerbated her emotional turmoil. The situation culminated on December 23, 2014, when Brooke lost custody of her children and was hospitalized for a panic attack, receiving a PTSD diagnosis. In 2015, Brooke wrote about feeling drained in her relationship with William Hahn. She felt he no longer made an effort to be intimate, and their moments together were brief and unsatisfying. As time passed, Brooke became withdrawn and isolated, exacerbated by a gallbladder disease diagnosis. The situation escalated in 2016 when William brutally beat her, pleaded guilty to assault, and was ordered to stay away. The relationship had deteriorated to the point where there were no longer any healthy moments. A major issue was that Brooke had become unable to have children following an abortion in 2011. Despite this, her partner William continually pressured her to have a child. In an attempt to keep him from leaving, Brooke lied about being pregnant in early 2017, even going so far as to email him a fake ultrasound picture and a photo of a positive pregnancy test. To further convince William, Brooke found a recording of a random baby's heartbeat online and presented it as the heartbeat of their unborn child. However, by August 2017, it became clear that Brooke was not pregnant. William, having already announced the pregnancy to those around him, was unwilling to admit the truth and instead demanded that Brooke produce a child. With her medical knowledge, Brooke began compiling a list of items needed to induce labor, driven by her desire to appease William's demands. On a Saturday afternoon in August, Brooke visited Savannah at her downstairs apartment and offered her $20 to model a dress Brooke was supposedly making. Savannah agreed and, before heading upstairs to Brooke's apartment, ordered a pizza, expecting to eat it when she returned home an hour later. She had to drive her younger brother to work later that day. However, Savannah failed to return on time. Her brother went to Brooke's apartment around 2:30 p.m. and heard the sound of a sewing machine, but no one answered the door. A few minutes later, Savannah's father, Joe, also visited Brooke's apartment and knocked on the door. Brooke shouted that they were still working on the dress and that Savannah was trying it on, which was why she couldn't answer the door. As Savannah's mother, Norberta, returned home, she drove her son to work herself. She found the pizza untouched and tried to contact Savannah by text, but received no response. Norberta then visited Brooke's apartment, looking for her daughter. She noticed that Savannah's shoes, purse, car keys, and belongings were still in the apartment. Given Savannah's pregnancy and related discomfort, it was unlikely she would go for a walk. Norberta called Ashton, hoping he might have picked up Savannah, but he said he hadn't heard from her either. Later that day, the police searched Brooke and William's apartment, as it was Savannah's last known location. The landlord allowed them in and did not obstruct their search. However, since they didn't have a warrant, the police did not search closets or behind closed doors. The police department explained to the family that Savannah was an adult and capable of making her own decisions without informing her family. With no evidence of a crime having occurred in or near the home, investigators concluded that Savannah had left voluntarily. The family was upset by the police department's indifferent attitude towards the case. The police conducted 2 more searches of the apartment but found nothing. However, William would later admit that during one of the searches, he hid the baby in a suitcase and Savannah's body in a dresser with the shells removed. 2 days after the murder, they disposed of the dresser containing Savannah's body by dumping it into the river from a bridge. On August 23, 2017, William's co-workers informed the police that he had mentioned having a baby at home. That same day, neighbors of the apartment building reported hearing a baby crying from apartment number 5 and immediately contacted the police. With this new information, the officers obtained a warrant and returned to the apartment for a more thorough search, during which they found a live newborn baby girl. Brooke revealed that Savannah herself had secretly given her the baby just 2 days after Savannah's disappearance. According to Brooke, Savannah had previously expressed that she did not want the baby. In fact, Savannah had visited Brooke earlier to ask how she could induce labor on her own. Then, in the early hours of the morning 2 days later, Savannah showed up at Brooke's doorstep with the baby and handed him over. Savannah was reported missing, and the baby was taken into temporary custody by Cass County Social Services. A DNA test later confirmed the baby's parentage, and he was reunited with his father for a short period. 8 days after her disappearance, a fisherman discovered a body wrapped in plastic on the Red River near Harwood. The body was identified as Savannah's through a tattoo on her leg that read, "Too beautiful for Earth." Subsequently, Brooke, Crew, and William were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to kidnap, and providing false information to the police. They eventually began to confess to their crimes. Brooke initiated a physical altercation with Savannah, who was pregnant, by accusing her of stealing and mistreating her cat. The confrontation escalated into a physical scuffle, during which Brooke pushed Savannah, causing her to hit her head on the bathroom sink and lose consciousness. Brooke then used a knife to make a cut from hip to hip, intentionally harming Savannah and her unborn baby. Savannah repeatedly lost and regained consciousness while Brooke did this. When questioned, Brooke admitted that William was not aware of the impending plan. According to Brooke, William came home, entered the bathroom, and saw Savannah's injured body. He asked if Savannah was alive, and Brooke replied that she didn't know. William then left the bathroom briefly and returned with a rope, which he used to strangle Savannah, ensuring her death. After the murder, Brooke and William cleaned the bathroom, scrubbing the floor and walls, and hid Savannah's body in a bathroom closet. When police officers arrived at the door, Brooke attempted to remain calm and composed. The officers searched the apartment but, lacking a search warrant, were unable to thoroughly inspect the premises, including closets and dressers. As a result, they did not find Savannah's body. The perpetrator stated that the child was lying under a blanket on their bed, next to William, during the searches that day. The child was calm and didn't cry, which is why they weren't discovered. However, by the third inspection on August 20th, the body had been moved and hidden in a dresser. Meanwhile, the infant was concealed in a suitcase. On the early morning of August 21st, the dresser was carried down the stairs, loaded into a Jeep Cherokee, and driven to a river, where it was disposed of. William denied participating in the crime but admitted to hiding the newborn baby girl and providing false information to law enforcement to cover up the crime. Brooke and William were set a $2 million bail, which William found unreasonable and unrealistic. Brooke Crew received a life sentence without parole. During the trial, William's involvement in the crime was not proven. However, Brooke's cellmate, Jennifer Robinson, testified against Brooke. According to Jennifer, Brooke claimed to have strangled Savannah with a rope after learning about Savannah's affair with William and suspecting that Savannah's child might be William's. On September 28, 2018, a jury acquitted William of conspiracy to commit murder. Nevertheless, on October 30, 2018, William was sentenced to life in prison for kidnapping, having pleaded guilty to the charge. The following spring, In May 2019, William appealed to the Supreme Court. After a sentencing review trial on October 7, 2019, Judge Olin stated that despite the Supreme Court's dissent, he would still impose the harshest possible sentence, which was 20 years in prison. Considering that William had already spent 775 days behind bars, he will have to serve more than 7 additional years of his 20-year sentence. Norberta believes her daughter Savannah's disappearance wasn't taken seriously because she's Native American. This sparked Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp to introduce Savannah's Law, signed in October 2020, to address violence against Native American women by improving collaboration between authorities. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kaler family. James Craig Kaler was born in 1963 in Weatherford, Texas. Karen Kaler White, his future wife, was born in the same city 2 years later, in 1965. They met while attending a Texas university in the early 1980s. At the time, Craig was a graduating engineering student, and Karen was a freshman studying humanities. They quickly discovered common interests and started a romantic relationship. Young and in love, they appeared to be the ideal couple, with Craig standing out as a top student due to his exceptional determination and engineering talent. After graduating in the late 1980s, they had a modest wedding with only close friends and family in attendance. They welcomed their first child, Emily, in 1991, and their second child, Lauren, in 1993. The family lived in a cozy house in Weatherford and enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle by local standards. In 1999, while Karen was pregnant with their third child, Craig received a lucrative job offer from a large utility company in Weatherford. His promotion coincided with the birth of their son, Sean, whom he cherished. Craig purchased a large house in a highly respected neighborhood in the city, along with a dependable car for his family. He became the main provider for the family, while Karen stayed at home. On the surface, the family appeared to be flawless. Their daughters, Emily and Lauren, were gifted in sports and music, frequently taking part in singing competitions and local activities. Emily was an outstanding student who went on to attend a prestigious pharmacy college, whereas Lauren, also an excellent student, aspired to enroll in a conservatory to pursue a music career. Their son, Sean, was a friendly, curious boy with a passion for mathematics and a dream of becoming an archaeologist. He had a close relationship with his parents and sisters. Craig supported the family financially, while Karen ensured the home was welcoming, took care of the children, and enjoyed baking. They was actively involved in community work, aiming to enhance their neighborhood, and had raised 3 gifted and wonderful children. However, despite their seemingly perfect life, the family was hiding numerous issues. In 2007, Karen confided in her younger sister, Linda, revealing that she was on the brink of a nervous breakdown. Karen expressed her distress over Craig's controlling behavior, which had been ongoing for years and was escalating. Craig insisted on a detailed record of every single expense, no matter how small, including daily household costs. Karen had to provide him with receipts from the supermarket, bank statements, and even report her daily activities while he was at work. The entire family was bound to a strict schedule set by Craig, dictating when they had to be home, sleep, wake up, eat, and even when they could be intimate. As time passed, Craig's need for control grew stronger. He became increasingly demanding and selfish, scheduling Karen's every move down to the hour. Karen felt trapped, with no personal time, only duties and responsibilities. She tried to meet all of Craig's demands, hoping he would eventually ease up and they could return to their previous life. However, Craig seemed to take pleasure in his control and showed no willingness to change. Linda was deeply disturbed by what her sister shared, having, like everyone else, perceived Craig as the ideal husband and family man, only to discover he was a tyrant at home. Despite this, Karen didn't want to break up her family and was financially dependent on Craig, along with their children. So, she decided to look for a job that could provide a stable income. Karen, a mother of 3, had maintained a remarkable physical shape despite her advanced age. She prioritized good nutrition, occasional dieting, self-care, and daily jogging. Unbeknownst to her husband Craig, Karen joined a local fitness club, where she spent several hours each day working out. This newfound hobby allowed her to relieve stress, find distraction, and clarify her thoughts. As Craig was at work, he remained unaware of her fitness routine. The fitness club management soon took notice of Karen, an attractive, fit, and dedicated individual. They offered her a trial opportunity to become a fitness instructor with the potential for a formal employment contract. Karen, a former stay-at-home wife, was thrilled by this unexpected chance to turn her passion into a paid career. When Craig eventually discovered Karen's secret, she anticipated a negative reaction, guess him to prohibit her from continuing. However, he responded calmly and seemed pleased that his wife had found a fulfilling activity that also earned her an income. Karen's husband had 3 conditions for their new arrangement. She had to be home when he arrived, cook meals, and maintain their intimate life. Karen agreed, as this gave her the freedom to manage her daily life and finances without needing to justify every expense to her husband. At the fitness club where she worked, Karen met Sunny Reese, a new instructor. They quickly became friends, and for Karen, who had been a stay-at-home mom for years, Sunny became a trusted confidant. As their friendship grew, Karen and Sunny spent more time together, going for walks, drinking coffee, and having in-depth conversations. Their friendship eventually evolved into something more, but they kept their relationship a secret. Karen knew she had to confess to her husband but struggled to find the right words and worried about the consequences. After months of preparation, she finally opened up to Craig. Although Craig was initially perplexed by his wife's confession, he remained calm and composed. The next day, he revealed that he was open to his wife's relationship with Sunny, but only if he could be a part of it. This proposal left Karen stunned and unsure of how to respond. Craig, however, took the lead and started wooing Sunny, showering her with flowers and small gifts. To him, this seemed like a chance to spice up his intimate life and bring passion back into his marriage to Karen. Initially, the 2 women agreed to Craig's proposal, but it didn't take long for them to realize that he was trying to assert his dominance. Their unusual love triangle was short-lived, and Craig was eventually told that he was no longer welcome in their relationship. Feeling offended, Craig ordered Karen to end the affair immediately, but she continued to see Sunny, having genuinely fallen in love. After nearly 2 decades of marriage, it appeared that Karen was willing to leave her husband for a new relationship. Craig relocated his family to Columbia, Missouri. He became the water director, hoping the move would end his wife's affair with Sunny and restore normal family life. The 2008 move proved challenging. The children adapted to new schools and made friends, while Craig thought he'd severed ties between Karen and Sunny. However, Karen and Sunny continued to secretly communicate through phone calls, texts, and meetings. Karen and Sunny would meet halfway at a roadside hotel, spending a couple of hours together before returning home. By this time, Karen was aware her marriage was failing. She no longer loved her husband, and it was only a matter of time before they divorced. These secret meetings continued until December 2008. On New Year's Eve, the Kaler family visited their hometown to see family and friends. Sunny was also at the party. Initially, Karen and Sunny kept a low profile, just exchanging greetings. However, as the party went on and they drank more, they became less concerned about what others thought. They were inseparable, holding hands, exchanging romantic glances, and were even seen kissing by some guests. Craig was furious, feeling insulted and humiliated by Karen's public display of her affair in front of dozens of friends, former roommates, and co-workers. He verbally attacked Karen and Sonny at the party, then forcibly dragged Karen away. On the way home, Craig lost control, grabbing Karen by the shoulders and shaking her violently, ripping her dress. He then slapped her, causing her to stumble and fall, hitting her head hard. Harassment continued after they returned home, and the conflict didn't subside. Karen told Craig a few days later that she was leaving him and started divorce proceedings, asking for custody of the children. Initially, Craig apologized and begged her to stay for the children's sake, suggesting they give their marriage another try. However, Karen was resolute and got a divorce. Craig then called their mutual friends and relatives, asking them to persuade Karen to stay with him and not break up the family. She informed him that she was ending their marriage to be with Sonny, admitting that she had never found true happiness with him. In early spring 2009, Craig and Karen got into another argument while still living together. This time, Craig became physically violent, prompting Karen to report him to the police, resulting in his arrest. However, Craig downplayed the incident at the police station, claiming he only restrained Karen to calm her down, which caused her bruises. Following this incident, Karen took the children and moved out without waiting for their divorce to be finalized. Craig was devastated and angry, especially when he found out his daughters, Emily and Lauren, sided with their mother, saying they had finally seen her happy after a long time. Craig felt betrayed and refused to communicate with his daughters, only spending time with his son Sean on weekends. Meanwhile, Craig held on to the hope that Karen would change her mind and return to him. His jealousy led him to try to control her, following her everywhere, watching her house, and even attempting to install a hidden camera. His obsessive behavior negatively impacted his job performance, resulting in him eventually missing work without a valid reason, which ultimately led to him being fired. After losing his job and income, Craig was forced to move in with his parents. With plenty of free time, he began stalking his ex-wife, Karen. In November 2009, just before Thanksgiving, Karen took her children to visit her 89-year-old grandmother, Dorothy White, in the small town of Burlingame, Kansas. On the evening of November 29th, the Burlingame Police Department received a call about a suspicious van and gunshots. Dorothy's neighbors reported seeing a small truck pull up to her house, and a man got out and entered the house. They heard screams and gunshots, but didn't intervene, fearing the man was armed. The man quickly left the house and drove away. When police arrived, they found a terrified 10-year-old boy, Sean Kaler, calling for help. He couldn't explain what happened, but police soon discovered a horrific scene. Inside the house, near the front door, they found Dorothy lying in a pool of blood, surprisingly alive despite 2 gunshot wounds. In the kitchen, police discovered 44-year-old Karen's body. She had been shot in the chest and then fatally shot in the head at close range by her ex-husband, leaving her no chance of survival. Nearby, between a wall and a couch, lay the body of Karen's 18-year-old daughter, Emily. Emily had attempted to hide from her enraged father but was found and killed with 2 point-blank shots. Upstairs, in a second-floor bedroom, Emily's younger sister Lauren was found in a pool of blood, still alive. Lauren fatally begged for her life, repeatedly stating that her father was responsible for the attack. Lauren and her great-grandmother were immediately rushed to the intensive care unit of a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, despite medical efforts, neither survived. Lauren died on December 1st due to massive blood loss and internal organ damage, while her great-grandmother passed away a few hours later. The only person who survived, Sean, was in shock. Psychologists helped him deal with the trauma he experienced, and since he was the only one who saw what happened at his great-grandmother's house, he needed to be questioned carefully. That evening, Sean's mother was preparing dinner in the kitchen when he approached her to ask for his favorite pies. Suddenly, the back door swung open and his father, Craig, entered with a shotgun. Without a word, Craig pointed the gun at his ex-wife and shot her, then fired again at closer range. Sean was initially frozen in horror, but when his father turned to him and stared silently, he realized he had to escape. He jumped out the open back door and ran towards the main entrance, hoping to alert his grandmother, sisters, and get help. However, upon reaching the threshold, Sean heard more gunshots and, fearing for his safety, hid in a nearby outbuilding. He heard additional shots and waited in terror. Craig was immediately added to the wanted list, with a warning that he was armed and extremely dangerous. The police received reports of a speeding truck, which helped them quickly determine the direction Craig was heading. At one point, Craig abandoned his vehicle in a wooded area and began walking down a deserted road. Law enforcement caught up with Craig the next morning and arrested him without resistance. In the vehicle, they found a rifle, ammunition, and medication for depression and anxiety next to the driver's seat. Craig appeared confused and frightened, admitting to being armed but stating he had no intention of using the weapons. At the police station, Craig initially confessed to his crimes and openly shared his story with the investigating officer. He explained how his wife's infidelity with Sonny and their public humiliation of him had led to his downward spiral. He shared how his efforts to save his marriage resulted in job loss and further erosion of his self-respect. Overcome with emotion, Craig expressed regret and a sense of betrayal by those closest to him, including his daughters. Craig's trial started in December 2010. His lawyer, Thomas Heaney, advised him to recant his initial confession and blame his actions on mental illness and insanity. This was Craig's only way to avoid the death penalty for the murder of 4 people. Heaney argued that Craig's mental state was severely impacted after his wife left him for someone else, his children sided with their mother, he lost his job, and had to move back into his parents' home. According to Heaney, these factors led to Craig's breakdown, causing him to commit the crime while insane and unaware of his actions. However, prior to 1995, a law in Kansas allowed for leniency if a defendant pleaded insanity, but this law was repealed. The prosecution found no evidence of insanity in Craig's actions, only deliberate planning. Craig bought guns and ammunition beforehand, went to the house where his family was, shot each victim twice to ensure no chance of survival, but intentionally let his son Sean escape. In August 2011, Craig was convicted of all charges and received a death sentence. At the final hearing, 12-year-old Sean testified, stating he didn't want his father to die because he was his only remaining close relative. Despite numerous appeals, the verdict remained unchanged. Today, Mr. Kaler is still imprisoned, fighting to have his case reviewed and the death sentence overturned. Following the death of his mother and sisters, Sean is now an adult, having completed his education, and has chosen to stay and work in his home state. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rob Andrew. Brenda Evers, the future wife of Rob Andrew, was born on December 16, 1963, in Enid, Oklahoma. She grew up in a devout Christian family that prioritized faith and family values. Her childhood was filled with regular family meals, group prayers, and church attendance. As a result, Brenda developed into a quiet and peaceful individual who excelled academically and spent much of her free time volunteering at church. As a high school student, Brenda was a cheerleader for the soccer team and enjoyed dancing, but she avoided parties and social gatherings. She aspired to be like her mother, who was a model of piety and modesty. Brenda's goal was to become a housewife after marriage, devoting herself to her husband and children. At the age of 17, Brenda met her first love, Rob Andrew, who was the older brother of her friend. Despite their different denominational backgrounds, Rob was a Baptist and Brenda a Lutheran. They shared conservative views on life, a strong faith, and a dream of building a large and close-knit family. The friendly relationship between them blossomed into something more. Although they were separated by 125 miles when she started college in Winfield, Kansas, they maintained regular communication. To be closer to her partner, Brenda transferred to a university in Stillwater, Ohio, a year later. They eventually got married in the summer of 1984. As Rob's career took off, he received a job offer in Houston, Texas. Although he had initially hesitated, Brenda convinced him to take the opportunity. While Rob thrived as an advertising manager, Brenda completed her degree and secured a job in banking. She fell in love with the city's vibrant nightlife, impressive skyscrapers, and fast-paced lifestyle. Her time in Texas brought about a transformation in Brenda, as she overcame her initial shyness and developed a more outgoing personality. She started taking care of her appearance, dressing fashionably, wearing makeup, and building a large social network. Rob was unhappy with the changes he saw in his wife. He believed a woman of faith should be more subdued. Additionally, Rob was homesick and eager to return to his old life. When he was offered his old job back at an advertising agency in Oklahoma City, he jumped at the opportunity. However, Brenda was not supportive of his decision. They argued about it, but eventually found a compromise. They agreed that Rob would settle in the new location, find a suitable house, and if everything worked out, Brenda would join him. They lived apart for a few months, but eventually reunited. In the early 1990s, they moved into a luxurious house in the upscale neighborhood of Lansbrook. Brenda gave birth to a daughter 9 months later. She even quit her job to become a full-time homemaker and devote herself to raising their child. 4 years later, they welcomed a son Parker. It seemed like they had the perfect life, love, children, a beautiful home, and financial security. On November 20th, 2001, Rob had arranged to pick up the children from his ex-wife to spend the holiday with them. At the time, they were divorced. In the evening, Brenda greeted him at the door and asked him to go to the garage to help her with some faulty equipment. Rob was bending down when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around, and a gunshot rang out. Around 6 p.m., emergency services received a call from Brenda Andrew. She reported that she was injured and her husband was dead. An ambulance rushed to the scene, where paramedics found a horrific scene in the garage. A man lay in a pool of blood, dead from a gunshot wound. His wife, Brenda, was shot in the arm but alive. Brenda's clothes were stained with blood, and she appeared detached from the situation. The paramedics believed she was in shock. She told them that she tried to give Rob first aid, but she thought he was dead. Brenda's hand was bandaged, and she was taken to the hospital. As the ambulance left, police began investigating the scene. They found a .22 caliber bullet lodged in the wall and a shotgun shell casing, indicating that multiple weapons were used. The officers also noticed that the victim still had his wallet on him, ruling out robbery as a motive. At the clinic, Brenda explained that she and Andrew were together when 2 masked and armed men suddenly entered the garage. Although she couldn't make out what they were shouting, one of the men shot Andrew twice, and the other wounded her as she tried to escape. The attackers then quickly fled the scene. Brenda claimed that Andrew was a kind and helpful person who didn't have any enemies. She acknowledged feeling frightened by the attack, especially since there were children in the house at the time. However, her account raised suspicions, and the police noticed several inconsistencies in her story. Notably, she mentioned that the children were present during the attack, but it was clear that they had not been prepared for a trip, contradicting her earlier statement. Interviews with neighbors yielded no useful information. To gain insight into Brenda and Rob's personal life, detectives questioned their friends and acquaintances, revealing marital problems since their second child's birth. Friends and Pastor Andrew reported that Rob confided in them about Brenda's abusive behavior and her hatred for their marriage. Ronnie Street, a close friend of the Roberts family, observed that Brenda's behavior had become unusual. She was open about her feelings, even with strangers, and her husband Rob seemed to love her unconditionally, forgiving her for her antics. Friends of the family noted that Brenda had undergone a significant change from being a typical housewife to someone with loose morals. There was substantial evidence to support these claims. Brenda seemed to be having a midlife crisis, dressing more provocatively and becoming secretive towards her husband. Rob soon discovered she was having an affair, which began in October 1997 with Rick Nunley, a co-worker from the Oklahoma bank. Brenda was married, but secretly dated someone for a year and then maintained occasional phone contact. She then started an affair with James Higgins, a local store owner, who was drawn to her bold style and flirting. They met secretly in a hotel room once or twice a week for about 5 years. Meanwhile, Brenda's husband, Rob, remained unaware of her infidelity. However, he couldn't help but notice that their marriage was falling apart. His wife had become distant, rarely speaking to him or spending time with him. Rob tried his best to hold the family together, hoping that things would eventually improve. In 2001, Brenda ended her affair with Higgins, but not because she wanted to salvage her marriage. Instead, she was sinking deeper into a life of immorality and vice. Around this time, a new Baptist church had opened in Oklahoma City, largely thanks to the efforts of Brenda's husband, Rob. He became a deacon at the church, and Brenda taught Sunday school. From the outside, it seemed like they were a perfect, moral family. Brenda, a devoted wife, taught her children about faith and community. She met James Patel, a part-time teacher and friend of Rob, who was drawn to her charm. As their relationship blossomed in 2001, they kept it secret but eventually became open about their feelings. Rob's suspicions of Brenda's infidelity led to a heated argument and separation. James also ended his marriage. While Rob hoped to reconcile, Brenda filed for divorce. A mysterious phone call and car malfunction followed, leading Rob to suspect James and Brenda were behind the attempt on his life. He reported his concerns to the police, raising questions about what drove him to make such a claim. Rob Andrew and his wife Brenda's divorce was already settled, including a custody agreement for their children. However, a large insurance policy taken out by James Patel could still financially benefit Brenda upon Rob's death. In fact, just months prior, James had sold Rob an $800,000 life insurance policy, listing Brenda as the sole beneficiary. This raised suspicions about Brenda's involvement in the recent violent attack on Rob. Detectives discovered that Brenda's new lover, James Patel, was involved in the insurance scheme and that Rob had tried to remove Brenda from the policy 2 weeks before the incident, but James refused, citing that only Brenda could make changes as the beneficiary. Rob didn't take his former friend's word for it, so he decided to investigate further by speaking with management. What he found out was shocking. Brenda and James had tried to forge the insurance policy by transferring ownership to Brenda, falsifying Rob's signature and backdating the document. However, Rob was assured by Pavet's superiors that he still owned the policy and that only the policyholder could make changes to the contract. When James found out about this, he was furious, as this discovery was the reason for his termination. In a separate development, an inspection at the neighbor's house, the Gigstad's family, yielded an unexpected result. A fired shell casing from the shotgun in question was found on the bedroom floor, and several .22 caliber bullets were found in the attic. At the time of the crime, the Gigstad couple was not home, and there were no signs of forced entry. Mrs. Gigstad revealed that she had given a spare key of their home to Brenda Andrew. Additional, James's daughter, provided another crucial piece of evidence. On the day of the crime, she had lent her car to her father, who promised to have it repaired. However, when James returned the vehicle, Joanna noticed that the repairs had not been made. Moreover, she found a .22 caliber bullet in the car, which she thought was suspicious. When she told her father about the bullet, he instructed her to get rid of it. Further investigation revealed that James had purchased a handgun just a week before the attack. This new information led detectives to plan a questioning of James and Brenda. The funeral of Rob Andrews was held on November 23rd, but it was notable for the absence of Brenda, her children, and James Pavitt. Their failure to attend the ceremony raised many questions among family and friends, and also sparked concern among the police. It soon became apparent that the missing individuals had fled, leaving behind a trail of suspicion and unanswered questions. The police had a breakthrough in the case. They had identified the suspects and received the autopsy results. However, Brenda's account of the attack contradicted the forensic evidence. The police discovered that 2 different guns were used in the attack, and the injuries sustained by Rob and Brenda differed from the description provided by Brenda. The investigation revealed that the first shot was fired from a shotgun at a distance, but the second shot came from a .22 caliber pistol at close range. The same pistol was used to shoot Brenda's arm. Analysis of the bloodstains on the fabric showed that the shooter was standing near the victim when the second shot was fired. The angle of the blood matched the shooter's position, indicating that Brenda was the one who fired the second shot at Rob. Brenda and James were officially named suspects and a warrant was issued for their arrest. However, they had a substantial lead and had already gone into hiding. The police notified border officials to be on the lookout for them, but they had vanished. It eventually became clear that James and Brenda had fled to another country, with Mexico being the suspected destination. To capture the fugitives, the authorities froze their bank accounts, assuming that without access to their funds, they would eventually surface. This strategy proved effective, and 3 months later, James reached out to his daughter, Joanna, requesting that she send him money. Unbeknownst to James, Joanna was secretly working with the investigators. Joanna had long suspected her father's involvement in the crime, as he had been secretive and evasive with her. She recalled a previous incident where he had asked her boyfriend to pose as a doctor and call Rob, informing him that his wife was ill. It led them to discover that James and Brenda were secretly staying in Cancun, Mexico. In February 2002, James Pavitt and Brenda Andrew were arrested at the border and turned over to U.S. authorities. They were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit a felony. The children were placed in the care of their paternal grandparents. During the investigation, neither James nor Brenda cooperated or pleaded guilty. James was the first to stand trial. The prosecution presented a strong case, highlighting James' background as an Army sniper and his experience with firearms. The court also heard about James' affair with Brenda and his attempts to prevent Rob Andrew from removing Brenda as a beneficiary. The jury considered the testimony of James' daughter and physical evidence found at the scene. James was found guilty and sentenced to death. Brenda's trial followed, but it was more dramatic and revealing than James'. The prosecution focused on Brenda's personality and history of infidelity, calling her former lovers to testify. They portrayed her as someone lacking in faith and integrity. When the prosecutor questioned Brenda about her husband's murder, she claimed to be innocent and asked to be set free, citing her faith. However, the prosecutor presented a different image of Brenda, portraying her as a woman who didn't love her husband, cheated on him, and killed him for selfish reasons. To support his argument, the prosecutor showed the contents of a suitcase Brenda had taken to Mexico, which included lingerie and a book about seduction techniques. He questioned whether a grieving widow would flee her husband's funeral. In contrast, the defense team attempted to depict Brenda as a victim of the events that transpired. The defense attorney pointed out that Brenda was also injured during the attack, but forensic experts concluded that she had shot herself in the arm. The defense then produced a letter allegedly written by James, confessing to the crimes. However, handwriting analysis revealed that the document was actually forged by Brenda Andrew herself. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, and Brenda Andrew was sentenced to death. Despite Brenda's repeated appeals, her conviction has been upheld. The crimes committed by Brenda and James are extremely disturbing. What makes their case even more troubling is that they presented themselves as devout and moral individuals who taught children right from wrong. This hypocrisy raises serious concerns, as people who preach one thing but do not practice it in their own lives can be unpredictable and devoid of empathy. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Courtney Holden. The Holden family, a typical American household in Spokane. Judy and John Holden, who had two grown daughters living independently, also had an adopted son, Joshua, who still lived with them. Joshua, a quiet and introverted young man, had not yet started his own family and remained at home. The Holden's family approach to childcare was unconventional. The family saw fostering as a way to earn a steady income through government benefits. Judy's background and experience as a mother earned the authorities as trust. 4-year-old Courtney Holden, born on February 28, 1992, had been living in a shelter for 2 years when her life took a dramatic turn. In 1996, Courtney moved to Spokane to join the Holden family, comprised of Joshua and several other foster children. The little girl's heart was filled with hope for a loving and caring family. However, her dreams were short-lived. From a young age, Courtney was forced to bear the burden of excessive household chores. She was responsible for cleaning the entire house and washing dishes for every meal. If she made even the slightest mistake, she faced punishment. Life in the Holden home quickly became a nightmare, surpassing the hardships she experienced in the house. What was surprising was that the Holdens treated the other foster children with kindness, but they showed inexplicable hatred towards Courtney. Judy Holden was already an adult when Courtney joined the family, and Courtney was the last child they took from the orphanage. This might be the reason for their unusual behavior towards her. Courtney was subjected to strict rules, including being forbidden from going outside without permission. Visitors to the Holden home often witnessed Judy and Joshua mistreating Courtney, calling her Cinderella in a derogatory manner. Courtney found herself in a difficult situation, but she was a resilient girl who adapted to the harsh conditions over time. She learned to fear her foster mother and was terrified of her brother Joshua, who prohibited her from socializing with friends and peers. She was not allowed to have a mobile phone or other modern conveniences, and she only left the house when necessary and with permission. The only times she enjoyed some freedom were when the house was empty and she could step out into the backyard or chat with neighbors. As she grew into an adult, Courtney became accustomed to her life and learned to treat her foster parents with respect, despite their mistreatment. She did not become bitter, as she had no concept of a normal family life to compare hers to. Courtney's life improved significantly when her brother Joshua moved out of the house due to disagreements with their parents. This newfound freedom allowed her to come and go as she pleased, spend time with friends, and enjoy activities she had previously been restricted from. As a result, Courtney finally felt happy. As time passed, Courtney graduated from school and met a man named Michael, with whom she fell deeply in love. Michael treated her with kindness and care, a stark contrast to her previous experiences. Their relationship flourished, and they welcomed a son together in 2011. However, things took a surprising turn when Michael asked Courtney to move in with him and start a life together as a family. Despite his requests, Courtney chose to remain in her parents' house and ended her romantic relationship with Michael. By this time, the Holden house had become empty, as the foster children had grown up and moved out. Courtney's foster father, John Holden, had passed away, leaving her to live with her foster mother, Judy, and her child. Michael was allowed to visit his son, but only with Judy's permission. During Joshua's absence, Courtney's life with her son was relatively peaceful. However, after their father's death in 2014, Joshua returned and began to harass the family. He installed numerous surveillance cameras around the house, posting signs that read, "Smile, you're on camera." The cameras made Courtney anxious, as she knew that leaving the house would likely result in trouble from Joshua. Courtney's life took a turn for the worse around 2015. She confided in a neighbor that Joshua had taken away her freedom, forbidding her from having a phone, using social media, talking to outsiders, driving, or leaving the house without his permission. He also forced her to cut ties with Michael after the child's birth. Despite this, Courtney remained silent and compliant. Neighbors noticed bruises on Courtney's face and arms and asked her about them. She openly admitted that Joshua was physically abusing her. The neighbors were concerned and tried to help her, even contacting the police. However, the Holdens were able to dismiss the cases because Courtney never publicly acknowledged the abuse. As time went on, Courtney was no longer allowed to talk to her neighbors, who only saw her outside in the evenings. She obeyed Joshua's rules without question. Those who knew Joshua described him as a large and intimidating man with a cruel and unpredictable nature. He was also known to be paranoid and prone to insults. Joshua had a history of violent behavior and had even boasted about being able to kill someone and dispose of their body with ease. In 2005, he was charged with assault and harassment, but the case was dropped due to lack of evidence and the victim's refusal to cooperate with the police. There were also suspicions that he had committed assault and misconduct against a woman in 2003, but he was never identified as the perpetrator. In 2006, Joshua was arrested for domestic violence against his mother and for burglary, leading to him leaving home for several years. The last message Courtney sent to a friend on Facebook, nearly 2 years ago, was a desperate cry for help. "I have to go. I must leave. Josh is coming." After that, her account went silent. Family acquaintances described the dynamics within the Holden household as strange and controlling. They were particularly puzzled by the fact that Courtney's child referred to Joshua's mother, Judy, as Mom and Joshua as Dad, while Courtney was referred to only by her first name. In August 2018, a heated argument escalated, prompting Courtney to try to leave, but Joshua, larger and stronger, physically restrained her and carried her back inside. It's the last time she was seen outside the household. It wasn't until nearly 2 years later, in October 2019, that concerns about Courtney's disappearance began to grow. Michael and his girlfriend, who had not seen Courtney in almost 2 years, started to worry about her whereabouts. He was eager to see his child, filed a missing person report with the police on October 24th, sparking an investigation into Courtney's disappearance. The Holdens claimed that Courtney had abandoned her child and fled. However, they could not explain who was continuing to access her Social Security benefits and electronic food stamps. On the same day as the search, Joshua and Judy withdrew the remaining $600 from Courtney's bank account. The next day, a woman claiming to be Courtney called the National Center for Criminal Information, stating that she was safe and did not want to be searched for. However, the police discovered that she was actually one of Courtney's stepsisters. As the investigation continued, Joshua and Judy provided multiple conflicting accounts of Courtney's disappearance. They claimed that she had run away with a truck driver, and later, that she had left with a secret lover. The inconsistencies in their stories, combined with Courtney's unexplained absence, raised suspicions that the Holdens were hiding something. In October 2019, Joshua and Judy Holden suddenly left Spokane, further arousing the suspicions of detectives investigating the disappearance of Courtney. The Holdens' family flight from the area strengthened the detectives' conviction that they were involved in Courtney's disappearance. The investigation into Courtney's disappearance continued, and the Spokane Police Department attempted a welfare check in early October, which quickly escalated into a missing person case. The case was assigned to Major Crimes Detective Randy Lesser, who has spoken publicly about the investigation. The information gathered from police interviews and court records has shed light on the events surrounding Courtney's disappearance. When Lesser visited the house in early October, Judy told him that Courtney had been home just a few days prior. She claimed that Courtney had left on foot with her son. However, when Lesser asked for Judy's phone number, she became hostile and locked the door in his face. Later, Judy allowed police to enter the house to see Courtney's room, but she became very nervous. The house was extremely cluttered, with piles of items covering all available space on counters. Courtney's room was also cluttered, and the mattress was bare, giving the impression that no one had lived there recently. At one point, Judy panicked when she lost sight of one of the detectives behind a closed door and ordered the investigators to leave. When Lesser asked to search the rest of the house for Courtney's child, Judy refused. A neighbor reported seeing Joshua, Judy, and one of Courtney's sisters leaving in a van with a child. Detective Lesser found it suspicious that Courtney, who suffered from a chronic illness, had not seen a doctor since October 2017. Her last prescription was in July 2018, although she had been receiving medications monthly before disappearing. Surveillance footage showed Joshua and Judy shopping with a small child. Cameras also captured they withdrawing money from Courtney's bank account on the day she was declared missing. By October 24th, Joshua and Judy had left their home. When police arrived to execute a search warrant, they found that the DVR from the home surveillance system had been removed, and the family's 6 pets were gone. Joshua and Judy's mobile numbers were deactivated in mid-November, but 2 new numbers with Texas area codes were activated on the same day. A month after the Holdens left, a neighbor called the police to report activity at the house. It was one of Judy's daughters and her husband, who had flown in from Texas to check on the property. They claimed they hadn't seen Courtney in 2 years and that Judy had retired. In mid-December, Joshua and Judy traveled to Texas, where they were eventually found by the police at Judy's daughter's house. Courtney's son was also present at the scene. Joshua and Judy Holden were arrested and charged with identity theft, interfering with child custody, and using Courtney's bank accounts without her permission. Fortunately, the child was found safe and was reunited with his father. No other family members were charged with any crimes. The police searched Judy's home in Spokane with search dogs but did not find any signs of Courtney. They also searched a home in Texas and a vehicle in Oklahoma, but these searches did not yield any clues about Courtney's whereabouts. Joshua, 40, and Judy, 74, were held in a Texas jail, where they refused to speak with police and fought extradition to Spokane. The authorities awaited a governor's warrant to bring them back, but since there was insufficient evidence to link them to Courtney's disappearance, they were likely released. This case remains one of the most puzzling missing person cases, with little progress made during the month-long investigation. The police have extensive notes on the case, but Judy and Joshua maintain their innocence in Courtney's disappearance. The police, however, suspect that Courtney is likely deceased, but they lack concrete evidence to prove it. It's tragic that Courtney was drawn into the Holden family, who failed to provide her with the love and support she desperately sought. Despite their mistreatment, Courtney wanted to believe they were her family and struggled to defend herself against their cruelty. The cruel reality is that there are many ways to secretly dispose of a body using chemicals that can evade detection by experts and police dogs, leaving Courtney's fate a heartbreaking mystery. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jenna Oakley. Jenna Oakley was born on March 2, 2001, in Indiana. She lived with her mother and 2-year-old brother in a troubled home. Due to her mother's neglect and inability to provide a stable life, Jenna often found herself left alone from a young age. The situation worsened over time, leading to intervention from Child Protective Services in April 2016. As a result, Jenna and her brother were removed from their mother's care and relocated to live with Philip Oakley, who their father and his wife, Rhonda, who was 52 years old at the time. Rhonda welcomed the children into her home and accepted them as her own. Philip later revealed that Rhonda had been eager to be a good mother to her stepchildren from the start. She welcomed them into her home with open arms and worked to create a safe and comfortable environment for them. Jenna was a difficult child to manage. Despite her academic success, which earned her praise from her teachers, she struggled to follow the rules in her new home. Her behavior became an even greater concern when her parents discovered her relationship with a 20-year-old man named Kenneth, whom she had met at the age of 10 while living with her mother in Indiana. Kenneth was a mysterious figure who seemed to be both a supportive influence and a hindrance in Jenna's life. To better understand the events that unfolded, it's essential to delve into Rhonda's story and explore the complexities of her personality, as well as the significant impact she had on Jenna's life. Rhonda Oakley was born on March 5, 1964, in Casey County, Kentucky, to parents Howard Lee Raines and Mabel Walls Raines. She graduated from Casey County High School in 1982 and went on to work for 30 years in a prominent company that specialized in marketing, packaging, and printing services. Rhonda was a kind, loving, and cheerful person who was highly respected by her friends, who admired her warmth and kindness towards others. Rhonda met Philip Oakley on a golf course, and they fell deeply in love. They decided to get married and start a new life together. However, their relationship was not without its challenges. At the time, Rhonda was divorced and had 4 children from her previous marriage. Philip and Rhonda's family were initially against their relationship due to their significant age difference. They asked Philip to end the relationship, which led to frequent arguments within the family. For that reason, Philip believed the relationship of Kenneth and Jenna was unacceptable because Kenneth was 5 years older than his daughter, Jenna. Philip even threatened to involve the police if Kenneth continued to date Jenna. To maintain control of the situation, Philip and Rhonda took measures such as confiscating Jenna's phone and computer and enforcing strict rules. The situation at home became so unbearable for she that she finally confided in her father and stepmother, promising to end her relationship with Kenneth. However, she failed to keep this promise and continued to secretly meet with him. As a result, her relationship with her parents deteriorated, and she began to harbor a deep-seated hatred towards her parents. On September 1, 2016, at around 4 p.m., David, her younger brother, returned home from school and entered the house. As he walked into the kitchen, he was startled by the sound of 3 of their dogs barking frantically in the basement. Curious, David rushed downstairs to investigate and found his mother, Rhonda, lying motionless on the floor. Panicked, David immediately ran outside to seek help and eventually went to a neighbor's house to call the police. When the emergency services arrived, they were unable to revive Rhonda, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. The police found deep cuts on her neck, indicating a brutal attack. Initially, the police suspected a robbery, but upon further investigation, they discovered that nothing in the house had been stolen or disturbed. The investigation into Rhonda's death began, and her family and friends were left wondering who could have committed such a heinous crime. As the investigation progressed, several key pieces of evidence came to light. Rhonda's car was discovered to be missing, and a trash can in the kitchen was found to contain vomit. Furthermore, one of the large meat cleavers from the kitchen was found to be missing, leading investigators to suspect that it may have been the weapon used to attack Rhonda. When Philip returned home, he was questioned by detectives and informed them that his daughter, Jenna, had not attended school that day. In fact, Jenna had been unreachable since the incident, and her teachers had called Philip early in the morning to report her absence. This led the police to believe that Jenna may have been kidnapped by the same individuals who killed Rhonda, and that she may be in danger. During the questioning, detectives asked Philip if he knew of anyone who might have wanted to harm Rhonda or the family. Philip revealed that his daughter's boyfriend, Kenneth, had a troubled relationship with Jenna, and that it had deteriorated significantly. Philip admitted that he had threatened to contact the police if Kenneth did not stop seeing Jenna. Philip suspected that his daughter had been dishonest with him and that she and Kenneth had never intended to break up or follow the rules. It was possible that Kenneth had planned to get rid of the source of his problems and take Jenna with him. After learning this, the police focused their efforts on finding Kenneth. They discovered that on August 31st, the day before the incident, Kenneth had flown from Indiana to Lexington, Kentucky, at 3 a.m. From there, he took a taxi to Oakley's house. Another crucial piece of evidence came from a store manager in Denver, who claimed to have seen Jenna with a young man on September 1st. The manager handed over surveillance footage to the police, which showed Jenna and Kenneth entering the store and then leaving together to get into a car that looked like Rhonda's stolen vehicle. Notably, Jenna appeared calm and normal in the footage, not showing any signs of distress or being coerced. Her behavior led investigators to dismiss the possibility that she was being held against her will and raised suspicions that she might be involved in a crime against her stepmother. A search of Jenna's room later revealed a diary that confirmed these suspicions. The diary exposed a deep-seated hatred that her family seemed to be unaware of. Jenna wrote about her ongoing feelings for Kenneth, with whom she had maintained contact despite promising to stay away. Interspersed with these entries were expressions of resentment towards her family members, which grew increasingly disturbing over time. Jenna wrote in her diary that she intended to kill her father, stepmother, and brother to prevent them from ever separating her from Kenneth again, allowing her to be with him without interference. She outlined a specific plan and timeline to carry out these actions. When her father, Philip, read her words, he was overcome with shock and fainted. He struggled to comprehend that his daughter would not only conceive of such a heinous act, but also possessed the determination to make it a reality. Jenna had a plan to kill her family members. First, she intended to kill her father between 4 o'clock and 5 a.m. by luring him to the basement and stabbing him in the neck. Her next target was Rhonda, whom she planned to kill in her bedroom between 6 o'clock and 8 a.m. using the same knife. After that, she planned to kill her brother David in his room. The police discovered Jenna's diary at the start of their investigation, which became the primary evidence against her. Meanwhile, Philip gave the police Kenneth's phone number, allowing them to track and apprehend Kenneth and his girlfriend. On September 4th, 3 days after the crime, investigators located the fugitives in Tucumcari, New Mexico. The police informed local authorities about the case, who quickly located Rhonda's stolen car near a hotel where Kenneth and Jenna were staying. They were arrested and transported separately to a New Mexico detention center, awaiting extradition. However, a search of the car did not yield the weapon used in the attack on Rhonda. Kenneth chose not to face trial. He attempted to take his own life in his cell by hanging himself and wrote a letter. Officers found him and rushed him to the hospital, where he was in critical condition. In his letter, Kenneth claimed responsibility for the crime and stated that he and Jenna acted according to his plan, attempting to take the blame to absolve her. The authorities kept Kenneth's attempt on his own life and his confession from Jenna for a time, deciding it was best she didn't know while being transported to Kentucky. They wanted her to give her own testimony without being influenced by Kenneth's actions. Upon arriving in Kentucky, Jenna also confessed to the crime, providing the police with a detailed account of her actions. According to Jenna, on the day before the crime, Kenneth visited her at her house. They met early in the morning, which is why Jenna didn't attend school that day. They spent the entire day together. Rhonda arrived home around 3 p.m. and encountered Kenneth in the basement. This encounter sparked an argument between Rhonda and Jenna, which eventually turned violent. The violence escalated to the point where Jenna attempted to strangle Rhonda by grabbing her neck. Kenneth then intervened, taking over from Jenna. He grasped Rhonda's throat with such force that she soon lost consciousness and fell to the floor. Once Rhonda was unconscious, Jenna took a kitchen knife and inflicted fatal wounds on her neck, leading to her death. Witnessing the scene caused Kenneth to become ill, and he vomited into a trash can. When questioned by the police about the knife used in the crime, Jenna stated that she and Kenneth had disposed of it during their escape. They had wrapped the knife in a bag and thrown it away at a fast food restaurant. Jenna provided this testimony while Kenneth was still in serious condition at the hospital. He was charged with first-degree murder but was unable to stand trial due to his self-inflicted injuries. After 6 weeks on life support, he passed away. In October 2019, Jenna was formally charged with her stepmother's death. The charges alleged she either caused the death or collaborated with someone else. She also faced a theft charge. Jenna was held without bail at a juvenile detention center. Her father, Philip, stated he didn't care that she was his daughter and felt she didn't deserve his protection after the incident. He hoped Jenna would receive the punishment she deserved. Jenna wasn't informed of Kenneth's death until a court hearing, where she fainted upon learning the news. After regaining consciousness, she screamed, cried, and struggled to calm down. In January 2019, Jenna pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter and expressed regret for her actions in court the following month. She expressed remorse for the pain, anger, and disappointment she caused. Upon learning of the plea deal, Philip expressed disappointment, stating that the system failed to prevent the crime against his wife. He claimed there were warning signs that Jenna was in trouble, but no one took action. Philip added that people often advise going to the police immediately, which he and his wife did, yet they still found themselves in a terrible situation. At the sentencing hearing in March, Susan Hooper, a mitigation specialist for the defense, explained that the defendant suffered from abuse, violence, neglect, and lack of basic human rights throughout her life. The lawyer questioned what could have driven a 15-year-old with no history of violence to commit such a crime. The lawyer noted that Jenna had no prior record, was respected by teachers and peers, and it was unclear what led her to take such a desperate step. It was also noted that none of Jenna's family attended the hearing. Philip declined to participate, and Jenna's mother never appeared in court to learn her daughter's fate. This was unusual, as parents typically show interest in the case's progress, even in difficult cases where the accused has committed serious crimes. The lawyer, Susan, gathered extensive evidence and records showing that Jenna was abandoned by her mother, Christ, who neglected her well-being. Susan conducted an in-depth examination of Jenna's early life by reviewing child care and medical records in Indiana and Kent. She also interviewed various individuals who knew Jenna, including neighbors, family friends, caregivers, teachers, school counselors, and her older half-sister. The sister's testimony was particularly relevant, as she had lived with Jenna for several years. According to the sister, they never had a stable or safe home environment. After Christ's divorce from Philip, she started working at a local Indiana prison, where she became romantically involved with an inmate. She eventually posted bail for him, and he moved into their home. This marked the beginning of a nightmare for Jenna, who was only 3 years old at the time. The man consistently robbed them and brought other women into the house, all while Jenna and her brother were present. A neighbor contacted Child Services after discovering that Jenna's family home was infested with rats and that the young children were being left alone all day. When a social worker visited the home, she encountered a hostile mother who refused to let her inside. Upon eventually gaining entry, the social worker was met with a horrific scene. The house was filled with rotting food, piles of trash, rat droppings, and human waste. The kitchen was overrun with unwashed dishes, covered in mold and infested with rodents and insects, including a large number of cockroaches and fleas. The children were living in deplorable conditions, with no regard for their safety. They had unrestricted access to medications and other hazardous substances, further endangering their well-being. Despite efforts to improve their situation, relocating Jenna and her younger brother to live with their father in Kentucky did not alleviate their problems. Susan stated that Philip and Rhonda neglected them, forcing Jenna to sleep in an unclean basement. However, the lawyer countered that Jenna had simply moved from one unstable home to another. Prosecutor Richie Borms presented evidence during the hearing, demonstrating that Philip made every effort to provide for the children's needs and create a good home. Despite the defense attorney's claims, Borms argued that if abuse or neglect had occurred, child care services would have been notified by Jenna's neighbors, friends, or teachers. Furthermore, the prosecutor inquired if the defense attorney was aware of Jenna's relationship with Kenneth and the fact that her parents disapproved of they. The defense attorney stated that Kenneth was the only person who genuinely cared for the accused, Jenna. According to the defense, Jenna's past experiences had left her with unmet emotional needs. She was searching for someone to provide her with the love and care she had always lacked, and having lost that person, she was now devastated. Defense attorney Anthony Lee Taylor presented scientific documents to justify Jenna's behavior. The articles explained how the child abuse Jenna suffered at a young age had negatively impacted her psychological development. Anthony told the court that his conversations with Jenna led him to believe that she lacked parental love and that her strained relationship with her mother contributed to her inappropriate relationship with Kenneth. Jenna supported this statement by reading a letter in which she expressed her deep regret and apologized to her family for her actions. She acknowledged the pain she had caused Rhonda's family and friends and claimed that she had since become a completely different person, distinct from the Jenna who committed the crime. When Philip stepped up to the podium, the atmosphere in the hall became tense. He and his daughter were visibly anxious about the impending conversation. Philip approached Jenna, looked her straight in the eye, and asked what had driven her to commit such a serious offense. He reminded her that as her father, he had always treated her with respect, and that Rhonda had never spoken ill of her or caused her harm. Philip explained that when they took Jenna in, it was to give her a better life, and that Rhonda had cared for her like her own daughter. However, Philip acknowledged that Jenna had been a challenging teenager, and that he and Rhonda had discussed sending her to a specialized institution to help her get back on track. Philip also shared his concerns about Jenna's relationship with Kenneth, describing him as a predator who had taken advantage of his underage daughter. Philip revealed that when he discovered Jenna and Kenneth were still in contact despite being forbidden from doing so, he reported Kenneth to the police and warned him to stay away from Jenna, threatening legal action if necessary. Philip turned to his daughter, visibly shaken. He condemned her crime as unforgivable, citing Rhonda's exceptional character as a wonderful woman and mother, unmatched by anyone. He emphasized how Jenna's actions had devastated not only Rhonda but also others. Philip then questioned why Jenna planned to harm him and her brother, arguing that she was not a victim, but rather someone influenced by circumstance. Despite this, he concluded by reaffirming his love for her, saying that regardless of her actions, she would always be his daughter. Jenna, overwhelmed, burst into tears, shouting at her father that she never felt part of the family and had never experienced his love. Following this outburst, the judge called for a recess to deliberate the verdict. On March 27, 2019, the verdict was announced. Jenna Oakley was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with 10 years for first-degree murder and 5 years for car theft. She would be eligible for parole in 2034. This case served as a reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, ultimately prevails, and those who commit heinous crimes will face their due punishment.